I like to live my life very unseriously. I'm a clown at heart, what can I say? I've never really liked to dive into super serious topics, and whenever I do, it's usually only briefly a part of a larger, sillier topic. I like to make my little videos that I've convinced myself is art, usually around stuff I'm interested in. Maybe some topic that's been floating around my mind, or maybe a game or TV show I want to talk about, typically coming to me in one of those moments of absent thought during my day of usually trivial work. But lately, it's been kind of hard to have those space-out thoughts while I think about a show I'm into or something because of more current events in other non-specific language to not date the crap out of this video. A lot of times I'll be thinking about something I find really cool and then open my phone and get reminded about all of the atrocities going on in the world. Usually I'm pretty good at just ignoring this stuff and focusing on my own little world, but as I've grown up and the world, in a few ways, has gotten worse, it's become pretty hard to just ignore it, you know? Yeah, I know realizing the world is a scarier place than you thought it was when you were younger is like the adult version of realizing Santa Claus isn't real, but I know I'm not the only one feeling this. For a while, I would say between February and April of this year, I was really just looking for that escape rope. The thing that would let me pull myself up and remember, oh yeah, I'm allowed to have fun. And I had finally thought it was about to happen with the Nintendo Switch 2 presentation. Yeah, you can fill in the blanks with that one. I was disappointed and upset, frankly. It didn't make me forget about how things were, it only made me think about them more. So, in a moment of weakness, I made a bit of an impulse purchase. Say hello to my Sega Dreamcast. I love this baby. She's got like 5 games, but all of them are 10 out of 10s. Really, this thing at the start was just my crazy taxi machine, but it didn't stay that way. As my own personal way of distracting myself, I decided I would try and collect every single Dreamcast game, which ended right after the next game I bought. I was looking for games for it, and I remembered one game I had always wanted to get into, but never could. So I decided, hey, what's the worst that can happen? At worst, I'll just add another Dreamcast game to my collection of 2 games. And despite what you may be thinking, this game wasn't the rope I was looking for. It didn't distract me from the world. It was a full frontal reminder of what the world is. And it turns out, that was exactly what I needed.
Set it off for the youth gone rat-a-tat. Feel the aftermath. Let it take it a good look with these life you took. No life for sale. None of this trade. Set it off for the youth gone rat-a-tat. Feel the aftermath. So they take it a good look with these life you took. No life for sale. One more tragic tale.
Who fucking did that? I am not kidding you when I tell you that Jet Set Radio for the Sega Dreamcast has honest to God changed me as a person. Look how I dress now. I look like Eminem in the year 2000 made a Spawn. It has taken over every little corner of my brain. I just need to unload all of it. It's so easy to go around spouting about how I love a piece of media. I've said it myself, but apparently I didn't even understand the concept of love before I played Jet Set Radio. It just felt like I had finally been heard by the universe. It felt like an exemplification of everything I had been feeling. I mean, in Jet Set Radio, you play as an older teen protesting against a mega corporation that has the entire police force under its thumb as they use procedurally aggressive methods to try and stop you, such as tear gas and military intervention. If I have to draw these lines for you, you're dumb as rocks! But how does a game like this from 25 years ago even come to be made? To answer that, we need to go back a bit. To the launch of the Sega Saturn. Sega had already been tearing it up with the Genesis, closely competing with the Super Nintendo, and decided they would shadow drop their next console. Great fucking idea, Sega. To be fair, this wasn't really a decision made by Sega of North America. This is more so a result of mounting pressure coming from the Japanese side of Sega to compete with the PlayStation, which was coming out sooner than it. They lost hard. Yeah, so that didn't go great. Under 10 million units sold. You did worse than the Wii U guys. Congrats. Because of how interesting Sega's decisions were at this time, they would go through a little bit of restructuring as their house was burning down. You see, Sega, like most other gaming companies, is made up of a bunch of little smaller studios beneath them. Some studios, like the AM2 and AM3 teams, made arcade games. The CS3 division worked on home console games. They had dozens of these under their belt, and when I say dozens, I mean 9. And a part of that restructuring would be taking those 9 studios and liquidating them down into 6, and even giving them all fun name. Like the AM3 team became Hitmaker, the CS3 team became the relatively obscure studio known as Sonic Team, but the one we care about for today's purpose is the one made out of the AMD 6 department, which would be turned into Smilebit. So how is any of this relevant? Well, to clean up the mess of the Saturn, Sega decided screw it, and to make a new console to clean up the mess the last one just made, which would be the Sega Dreamcast. Sega's last hope, considering how bad the last one did. Because of the circumstances around the console, it would be just a little bit rushed. If it wasn't obvious just looking at this control controller. The cord goes to the bottom, these buttons feel like pressing on soap, and there's no right analog stick. Who thought this was a good idea? Probably nobody, actually. Now, all of this is cool and great, but how does Jet Set factor into this? Well, the Sega Saturn would cater towards more of a fantasy kind of aesthetic with a lot of the first-party games. Battle Arena Toshinden, Dragon Force 2, Nights into Dreams, Panzer Dragoon. But with the Sega Dreamcast, they were trying to replicate the same Sega edge that made them more popular in the first place. New first-party games like Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and Shenmue, arcade ports like Crazy Taxi and Daytona USA, and then edgy-ass games like Dynamite Cop, Headhunter, and Blue Stinger. They wanted to show how flipping cool they were again. In this pursuit of making games people actually care about, they strolled up to Smilebit sweating bullets and simply said, "Games. Make them." In which they replied with, This is what introduces two of the most important players in the whole story of this game's development. Also, before I introduce these two, there is so many Japanese words in this video. I am so sorry if I get names wrong. Ryuto Ueda, concept artist and former Panzer Dragoon developer, and Masayoshi Kikuchi, also a Panzer Dragoon developer. This is the most I will ever talk about Panzer Dragoon, considering I don't even know what it is while writing this. They were also pretty tired of generic fantasy and wanted to do something just a bit out there. They didn't want another stupid fantasy game with dragons and wizards and women. They wanted a real-ass game with taxes. They wanted a game that felt like it was a part of pop culture. And at no greater time did they feel this than working on Panzer Dragoon on the Saturn together. They wanted to make something fresh, something that felt relevant. So, inspired by the theming of Fight Club and the art style of Parappa the Rappa, Ryuto Ueda made a bunch of these funky little drawings of very modern punk-looking teens. I'm 90% sure all of the different sketches I'm showing you are the ones that they made, but I could be wrong because I couldn't find any solid source on what they looked like. They used these images in the Jet Set Radio documentary while talking about it, so I'm gonna use it here. And Kikuchi saw Ueda sketching all of these when they should be doing their jobs, and in his own words, quote, said, "Holy fuck." That's not an actual quote. He also thought they looked cool. So flash forward to the Dreamcast when they were approached by Sega to make literally goddamn anything. They pitched the idea of a modern hip-hop inspired video game to Sega. And since this was their desperation, I'll literally take anything you give me era, they surprisingly accepted. I say surprisingly because these pieces of concept art are literally all they had. Kikuchi said in that same Jet Set Radio documentary that at this point in development, the game could have literally been anything. An RPG, an action game, a boxing game, I don't know. So the two of them, as well as the rest of Smilebit, got hard at work on what would become something. After thinking over it long and hard, they finally came up with the concept for what their youth culture game would be. What better to fit a game with that vibe than what was popular with kids around the time? The late 90s to early 2000s was a really rebellious time for most young adults and late teens. And a symbol of that rebellion came in the form of inline skating. I mean, anybody could do it. With a little bit of practice, you could stroll around with 4 wheels on each of your feet that go slightly faster than walking. And they decided that this would be how their game would play. And with this, they finally began the process of making Jet Grind Radio. Yeah, fun licensing issue in the US. I'm calling it Jet Set Radio for the remainder of this video. I just feel like it's important to mention the Dreamcast version is legally called Jet Grind Radio. I also lied, they're not hard at work on shit. Yeah, at this point in development, they didn't really have the developers? More specifically, at this point in development, they didn't have any programmers on hand because they were all being used to put out the Kitchen Fire Sega started. Fortunately, this gave them extra time to refine what they already had concept-wise and come up with what they would want the finalized game to actually be like. I struggle to come up with a name for how this gameplay is like. So, it's a platformer, there's no denying that. You do in fact do platforming, with the objective of spray painting different things around the environment, so maybe a collectathon, except instead of collecting things, you're putting paint on a wall. It's kind of an open world. I wouldn't even dare call it a sports game because outside of the rail grinding and wall riding, you're not really doing many sports. Fun fact actually, they were originally going to go with a skateboard to have the player on since skateboarding was also very popular and edgy. But as stated in an IGN article from 25 years ago that doesn't credit the speaker and gets the name of the company they're speaking to wrong within the first sentence, they decided to go for inline skates because that would allow for the legs to be free and move around individually, so the characters could do stuff a skateboard wouldn't allow for, such as going upstairs and and jumping higher, as well as making more dynamic poses with the legs not being locked together. Now is not the time to discuss this, but I have absolutely no idea how you would even pitch or describe this game to somebody else, which if I can't describe it 25 years later, you know people were damn confused looking at this game when they showed it off. It can be kind of hard to understand what's going on at a glance, so people instead gravitated towards the much more standout thing about how this game looked. So in all of my research, it said that this game was one of the first, but until I find otherwise, I'm just gonna say it was the first game to use cel-shaded graphics. There are other games that look pretty dang similar for sure. Games that come to mind like this that came out before Jet Set are Mega Man Legends and Klonoa. But those are close. This is it. This was done through a method of taking a cell and then doing the shading. I have no idea how this even works, I'm not gonna pretend to. And with this revolutionary new art style figured out, they kind of had most of everything they needed. There are some things I haven't talked about, but I would prefer to save those for later on in the video when they're more relevant to what I'm talking about. After properly starting programming 1999 and finishing mid-2000, yes, this game was made in 10 months, Jet Set Radio would finally be released in Japan in June and in October in North America. I'm done talking about how this game was made because I seriously cannot wait a second longer to talk about the game itself because holy So with all of this game's inspirations in mind, what kind of premise would they come up with? The punk culture, the skating, the cel shading, the anti-disestablishmentarianism in the city that cannot be found on any map that was completely made up for this game and does not exist in anywhere in real life. Tokyo. There are these groups of punks the government and society at large calls Rudies. Groups of kids wearing modified inline skates with new Netrium batteries inside. The game never explains what the hell that is, but I'm guessing it just allows for the skaters to canonically break the laws of physics with their every move. These ruffians regularly compete in turf wars, spraying their gang graffiti markers around different parts of the city, kind of as a way of expressing themselves. Which was all going fine for a while until the Metropolitan Police and the in-game company of the Rokoku Group joined together to launch their 21st Century project, which would crack down on the Rudies and their graffiti tagging pretty extremely, with Captain Onishima leading the force. Really happy this is a work of fiction, by the way, because a billion-dollar company teaming up with law enforcement to attack protesters luckily hasn't happened yet. Also important to note that I'm going to be using the 2012 port of the game to the PlayStation 3 to display most of the footage for a majority of this video. I'm still going to be talking about it as if I'm talking about the Dreamcast version, I'm just doing it for the convenience of viewing. You'll be able to notice when I switch between versions though, trust me. Anyway, for at least chapter 1, that's pretty much the whole setup. It's you versus the man, as well as 3 other street gangs, including your own. There's Poison Jam, this group of thugs that's all dressed up as fish monster things. The Noise Tanks that wear full body suits covering up any exposed skin with a technology theme. And then the Love Shockers, which is an all-female team of skaters with honestly not much outside of that. That's their whole gimmick, it's that they woman. And then there's the 4th group in Tokyo To that really doesn't have any specific theme to it. That is because it consists of the main characters, and if all of them look the same, it would be really boring. These are the GGs. I like to imagine they're kind of made up of the rejects and outcasts, and that's why none of them really fit in with one another. And where the game picks up is you joining them. You can play as any member of the GGs past the tutorial area, but for right now, you play as our unofficial main character, Beat. He's trying to join the GGs for probably the same reason all the other characters are, and that's just because they think it's cool and rebellion or something. This is also where we get introduced to the pivotal 3 members of the GGs. Obviously Beat, Tab, and Gum. Yeah, pretty much every character has weird ass names like this, get used to it. This tutorial takes place around the Shibuya bus stop. Now I could explain how the game plays here, but I would rather wait until we get to our first proper level also at the bus station. Before we discuss any further, we have to talk about what I feel like is the biggest elephant in the room for this game, and that's I feel like there's absolutely no way I can start talking about the rest of Jet Set without talking about how wild and wonderful its gameplay style is. Pressing A will let you jump, kind of obviously. The R button will give you a temporary run. It only lasts for a few seconds and you can tell it's actually doing anything by the blue sparks. I guess that's what those Netrium batteries are about. This is good for getting quick little bursts of momentum and making the levels traversed easier. And the L button does 2 things. Tagging / spray painting or whatever you want to call it, and adjusting the camera. Yeah, Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the Dreamcast controller was shit and kind of rushed for a reason. The lack of a right analog stick meant that 3D games, which was like most of the library, had to work around the lack of twin sticks. A lot of games were able to get around it, like Sonic Adventure 2 and Crazy Taxi, but unfortunately, I don't think Jet Set Radio is one of the ones that was spared from this. Fear not, people who hate this game, I'll talk about this one later. Trust me, it's better if I talk about the camera in its own chapter, okay? The L button is also used for what is the central mechanic of the game. Throughout all of the levels of Jet Set, there are cans of graffiti pretty much everywhere you look, and littered around with all of them are around 10 to 20 graffiti spots. It's kind of hard to come up with any form of comparison for the graffiti spots, so I'm just going to describe them bluntly. 4 different types exist. I don't think they have any official names, so I'm just going to give them ones. Small, medium, large, and murals. Each of them taking up a certain amount of spray cans. Small ones take 1, mediums take 3, large ones take like 7, I think, and then murals are just 2 large ones like right next to each other. This is also another major point of contestment with the game. How the graffitis work for all of them except the small ones is you have to stop in place and perform a quick time event. You'll have to twist the stick around in certain rotations for each one, getting more difficult as it goes. For example, right as you start spraying, it's usually just a line straight up or down, and near the end of it, it's around 3 to 4 actions that need to be completed in sequence. And if you mess up any of these, you'll have to start the pattern over. You don't have to start the entire tag over, luckily, but you will lose your combo. What the heck is a combo in relevance to this? Well, that has to do with the centralizing mechanic of everything in this game. The ranking system. Pretty much everything contributes to what rank you'll get at the end, going from pedal at the bottom to jet all the way at the top. Everything you do adds on to this. How much time was remaining when you finished, how much health you had, how many spray cans you were holding, how many points you had accrued, with points being the largest thing out of all of them. The biggest thing that will be netting you points throughout the locations of the game are said graffiti spots. I've seen a lot of people argue that having to stop into a fucking Tatsumaki Senpuka in the middle of a platforming segment is very much a pace killer, but honestly, I kind of love it, mainly because it introduces this crazy risk-reward system. Around 1/4 through the stage, the Metropolitan Police will catch up to what you're doing and try to stop you, with progressively severe methods. In the first level, it appears after around like 4 to 3 graffiti tags, and comes in the form of a basic police squad driving in. And at about the halfway mark, Onishima joins the fray. He's in a lot of these early game stages, kind of like a special unit that'll hunt you down personally. He's like this game's water wraith. When you're doing a big tag spot is when you're most exposed for basically the whole game. So a big part of Jet Set Radio's flow is the mental game of, do I keep spraying this for as long as I can to rack up as many points as possible, or do I give up halfway through and come back to it, losing my combo while avoiding damage and saving time from the police tackling me? This thought comes up in pretty much every level of the game. I would say a decent amount of Jet Set's gameplay comes through strategizing of which graffiti spots to do and when. Because, as I've said, the police only come in a certain part of the level after a certain amount of graffiti tags. So doing the more exposed and long-winded ones first tends to be a pretty common strategy for me. But that also throws in another layer of strategy. The cans that are spread across the level are usually near the smaller graffiti spots, which can be tagged instantly and don't need to be stopped for. So should I save time and tag those while I'm here, or should I wait till later and do the bigger ones now? It may take more time this way, but it's a lot safer and could potentially save time later. Certain parts of levels are up on higher ground where the police can't get you, so saving those areas for last is a definite. But wait a second, the higher areas are usually pretty barren of spray cans, so should I try to get those first? Because getting up there later with less cans than I thought I would need would mean going all the way back down, then up again. And all of that is not even mentioning the green graffiti spots. The graffitis are separated into 2 separate types throughout all of the game. Pausing the game will show you how many graffiti spots are left, as well as where they are on the map denoted by the G symbols. Not sure if the G stands for graffiti or it's because we're playing as the GGs, but I digress. The spots that are marked are the red ones, while the green ones aren't shown on the map. This is because they are completely optional. You can skip every single green graffiti spot and still clear the stage just fine. But doing the green graffiti spots gives you the same amount of points equivalent to the red ones. So do you want to stay in the level longer, risking not only time but dying to get more graffiti points? Or do you want to end it as fast as possible to get a bonus from time, cans held, and health? There are so many layers to the points and tagging system. There's no one approach I always go for when starting up a level. I usually just go in whichever direction feels right, then adapt my strategy from there. It's awesome, the amount of ways you could approach levels in Jet Set. But to keep talking about the gameplay, I think we need to move on from just the Shibuya bus terminal. After completing this level, the game finally opens up and we can properly dive into the
I can see them run about the town. I can hear them all sing.
The game is broken up into 3 main provinces that make up the whole of Tokyo-to. When they were creating the game, they not only took inspiration from the youth culture in Japan, but also the whole of urban Japanese areas as well. Shibuya-cho is based off the real-life city in Japan known as Shibuya. Kogane-cho is based off the eastern, poorer parts of Japan. And Benten-cho I couldn't find any direct inspiration for, but I believe it's probably inspired by what some Japanese cities look like at night, such as Shinjuku or Akihabara. As you progress through the main campaign, you'll go through different chunks of each province of the city. These levels serve to build up not only just each part of the city, but each part of the city's identity as well. Shibuya, the city of daylight, much like the real-life place, is a fairly people-centered city. It even has a similar crossing to the real one, with Central Street being composed of shopping outlets in more uphill parts of the city, the bus terminal I've already shown enough footage of, and Park Street, which kind of serves as a third space right off the highway with a community playground. With most of Shibuya being comprised of roads, it's no surprise this area is littered with one of the game's only stage gimmicks, being cars. I wouldn't call them hazards, despite the fact they can run you over and sometimes drag you away from where you wanted to be, because they can actually help you out an awful lot in some cases. Holding the run button while being behind one will make you latch onto the back, which is nearly essential for climbing the hills of Central Street. And not just that, the cars 90% of the time are faster than you, so latching onto one can give you a pretty big speed boost in a lot of cases. Benten, the city of the night, is ramped way further up with the punk influence, taking place in this really funky looking city with super bright neon colors. When they were making the game, they wanted to create something that couldn't be replicated on the PS2, so boosting the hell out of the colors while having dozens of NPCs on screen at once was one of their main objectives, and I think it's no better orchestrated than in these levels. Benten is a far more sociable city, with far less shops and more places for people to just hang out. Jinsei Lane is comprised of a bunch of densely packed apartments and houses. Roman Street has plenty of wide open roads and many little businesses, making it a go-to for partygoers of the night. Route 0 is the only place with moving cars in the area, and is mostly made up of footbridges going over tightly packed roads. And then there's the final area I just can't figure out. Yakijime, dear god I hope I'm saying that right, is made up of just a bunch of stuff. There's a bunch of handrails going in the circle around the center thing. It's got a bunch of rails that lead in different directions, but like what purpose city-wise does this place actually serve? It has a door to enter it that's like 10 feet off the ground, and the only exit you have to jump off of a truck to get up to. How do people even get here? This is genuinely the only location in the game where I kind of just scratch my head at because I don't understand what kind of purpose it serves. I mean, yeah, it's fun for gameplay, don't get me wrong, but like, what the hell am I looking at here? Why are there handrails next to billboards? What? Look, I'm aware I'm being very, like, unnecessarily harsh to this one area of the game for no reason, but honestly, the only reason I'm like that is because every other area in Tokyo-to feels so integrated into the world, which smoothly leads us into our last and my favorite area of the game. Kogane, the city of sunset, is probably the coolest out of all of them for me personally. Instead of having any entertainment focus like Benten or Shibuya, it's all just kind of a residential area, which I hesitate to call it considering there's a location inside of it called the residential area. Everywhere in Kogane just feels like it's been lived in one way or another. Kibogaka is made up of dozens of densely compacted houses all sandwiched in within one another, with little alleyways and nooks giving maneuverable areas in between all of them. The residential area is a bit more spaced out with areas for people to actually move around, also having a little wraparound dock connected to the mainland, connecting even more housing, and little bridges arcing over this thing. I have no words to describe what this area is. Just look at the screen for a second and you'll immediately understand what I'm talking about. I just don't know how to describe this little area verbally. The construction site is nearly barren of all people, just an abandoned warehouse with unused vehicles scattered everywhere. And finally, the sewers, the most self-explanatory area in the game. They're sewers. There's some cool half pipes, little bridge over the center. One thing I love about Jet Set is that it makes every province feel unique. One of the key ways they achieve this is by having different times of day exclusive to different areas. Benten is the city of the night, Shibuya is the city of daylight, and Kogane is the city of sunset. All three of these complement each other with not only the time of day, but how all three of them function together to make up a different part of the city function-wise. Shibuya is the more shoppable and the biggest travel-based spot of all of the city, with its plentiful main roads, giant plazas, plazas, and singular playground off the highway. You go too fast off that slide and you're getting peeled off with a snow shovel. Kogane has the greatest population density despite not seeing many of those people around. And Ben 10 is kind of an all-rounder with apartments and temporary housing and a good mix of wide open streets perfect for the never-ending party that it is. Something I adore that Jet Set Radio does are all of these subtle details that clue you into more about the story of a specific location. Like, let's look at Kogane real quick. In the residential area inside of those houses on the water, you can easily break through the walls just by running at them. There are giant metal tubes laid out on a big empty plot of land. There is a bunch of unused I-beams just laying on unfinished supports by the water. There's a giant ass gas tower right here with no fencing blocking off its access. Just from this alone, not even factoring in the abandoned construction site, it's very obvious to me that the government of Tokyo Toto doesn't really care about the upkeep in Kogane that much. Crushed cars are stacked high in the construction site with broken down ones being scattered all over the place. If we take that in comparison to Shibuya, the difference is practically night and day. Or dawn and day, I guess. Shibuya is significantly cleaner and nicer feeling. No doubt being one of the more traveled locations in the city, of course they would want to make sure it looks as presentable as possible. And Ben 10, which kind of changes based on what part of the area you're in. Roman Street is pretty trashed looking, which makes sense judging by the party that is actively going on when you enter the area. The apartments are also pretty cleaned up, if not a little messy looking. The location I can't pronounce and is impossible to name the function of is a very large hangout area, so there's ads everywhere. Ben 10 is definitely the most all over the place part of Tokyo-to, but that isn't a bad thing. Honestly, that kind of makes it feel more like, well, a part of a city. Every area is multifunctional and is somehow always one turn away from an area that's completely different than the one you were just in. All of these area designs have so much attention and detail poured into them, it's honestly so cool. It really feels like this could only come out of the mind and hands of somebody who lives in Japan and could base everything around their real life. And holy shit does that carry with the NPCs. This is such a who gives a fuck detail for the greater scheme of the game, but I love how all of the different people in the levels work at expanding the vibe of where they are. You can see drunken people moving around the streets of Ben 10, elderly and young all playing in Kogane, and then a huge variety of people in Shibuya. High school students in all different years, families, young couples, all intermingling through the streets of Shibuya. Older people who have settled down and started families in the residential area, homeless people aimlessly wandering around the abandoned factory, people of all shapes and sizes strolling around Jinsei Lane. There is so much unnecessary attention to detail of every little spot of this game. I genuinely love every area in Tokyo-to. It all feels so lived in. These don't feel like video game locations, for the most part. These feel like real places people live. They made damn good locations for this game. But while these function as bang-up cityscapes, do they function as well when they're held up to the standards of being
Fly like a butterfly. Fly like a butterfly.
When it comes to areas in video games that are both a part of the environment and areas the player is supposed to be able to traverse, it's important that, depending on how much realism your game is supposed to have, that an area is both fun for the player and isn't too weird looking, like it's supposed to be a video game location. Quickly looking at some examples of this being done badly: Pokemon Sword and Shield, Spikemuth City being an entire city that side-scrolls for some reason, and Dark Souls 2 with its infamous Eastern Peak elevator. Just a little windmill in the middle of a valley with an elevator inside. Taking the elevator upwards leads you to, oh my god. When it comes to designing a world that is supposed to be interconnected and make sense, it's hard to balance making it also fun from a gameplay perspective. And when it comes to Jet Set Radio, it's kind of hit or miss with this. But to talk about that, I need to talk about the big skating related elephant in the room of this game's gameplay. I've been saving this discussion for now for a reason. There's this one line from a song in Jet Set Radio Future that people like to use all the time when describing the gameplay of either Future or this one. The line is from the song Fly Like a Butterfly, and the quote reads,
I felt like a bulldozer
Wild and
trying to catch a butterfly.
wild and wonderful monster.
This is a very hard line because it's amazing at describing what this game is like for new players. I would like to preface what I'm about to say by saying that Jet Set Radio is one of my favorite games ever made, and I love it with all of my heart. But holy shit, is this the least welcoming game for new players. The skating controls feel like ass. I'm walking around on ice all the time, and I never go where I want to go, and I keep falling. I can never manage to get onto the rails, and it's stupid. These are thoughts I felt every 10 seconds during the earlier parts of my first playthrough. But even though it felt like the game was actually based on the Arctic instead of Japan, I didn't want to stop, because I felt like I could get better. I felt like everything could click. I felt like I could catch the butterfly. Skating and grinding is how you'll be exclusively traversing Tokyo-to. Tony Hawk and how it plays is by a mastery of both physics and skating as a whole, needing to keep your weight balanced on grind rails, having to perfectly do tricks or else you'll fall off your board. Jet Set Radio has absolutely none of that. This is because not only do they want to keep things simple, but also because they were going for more of a platformer direction, like I was saying earlier. And staying with that direction, there's really only 4 types of actions you can do. Grinding on rails, momentarily wall grinding, jumping off of half pipes, and spinning around to skate backwards. That is literally it. And mind you, for all of these little actions you can perform, there is no fancy bells and whistles needed to do them. To grind on a rail, all you need to do is jump on the rail. From this description, it might seem like it's stupid simple, but the nuance doesn't come in the complexity of performing the moves. Much like Sonic's concept of level design, it comes from the timing and execution of everything. For example, the trick system. Unlike more traditional sporting games, there's no button you have to activate a trick. You more sort of enable a trick to happen. If you have enough speed going down a slope or a rail and then jump, you'll do a trick. If you jump off a half pipe near its apex, you'll do a trick. These are really the only ways you can perform tricks. But much like graffitis, there's a combo system to it. The longer you don't touch the ground, the bigger a multiplier you'll get. So if you're just grinding without doing much for a few seconds, you'll be getting a constant flow of 10 points, which then turns into 20. 20 then turns to 30, you get it. And this number will keep going up the longer you're on rails. So if you can chain enough rails together, you'll get more and more points. But obviously, rails aren't everywhere. So you'll need to combine that with skating off walls and maybe throwing in a few twists here and there for style points. To bring back the Sonic comparisons once again, you can totally play through the game while just completely ignoring the point system, but the game encourages you to do better and better through the higher ranks. Like, here's a little cheat speedrunners use if you want to completely ignore the risk reward with the graffiti because you don't care about the ranks. Hit L to start the graffiti, move the joystick in the direction of where the very first input is, hit L to stop spraying the wall, and mash this over and over until it's complete. Not only will you get no points from this, but you will get motion sickness. But if you don't care and just want to coast through the game not caring about this, then knock yourself out. Honestly, skating in this game feels so damn fun once you get it. Hopping from rails to walls to graffiti spots while trying to maintain your speed enough in order to do tricks to get even higher amounts of points is such a satisfying and engaging gameplay loop. We fucking ran out of breath. But this chapter isn't about the gameplay, and the gameplay loop only works if the levels can support it. And I think, except for a few exceptions, all of the different areas in Tokyo-to managed to pick up the gameplay loop. Let's look at the residential area in Kogane, for example. The game starts you down next to the water with your only objective being get to the top. Now, what the game is expecting you to do in your first playthrough is to go up these stairs, run through these houses, go up more stairs, and boom, you're there. But doing the fast and cool thing, you can instead go up the stairs, immediately turn around, wall grind here, and boom, skip the entire first step of going around. From there, you can either go up the stairs, or jump up on these houses and rail grind on this fence to get up there even faster. Another stage with a similar setup is Jinsei Lane in Benten. This level is broken up into 3 layers: the streets, the rooftops, and the rooftops above those. You can access all of these layers from each other interchangeably. You can go straight to the top from the skyscraper by using the stairs at the street level, or if you get enough speed from the rooftops, you can do a well-timed rail grind up there. It's also kind of broken up into about 4 hallways, which you can spend time going around everything to get to the other ones, or you can go in a massive-ass circle by chaining wall grinds and rail riding together. Shibuya bus terminal is designed so that you can go in a massive circle without ever having to stop until you want to. As long as you're good at chaining moves together, that is. There's this bridge that's under construction in Park Street. You could grind off this leftmost wall to cross, or you could skate on top of every guardrail and then flip off this construction vehicle. You can probably tell where I'm going with this by now. Practically all of Jet Set's levels have this invisible rule of cool baked into them. Whatever is the coolest way you could think of doing something is usually the fastest or the most rewarding one. Remember that you're timed for all of these levels, so getting to skip this giant segment of Kogane through the right execution of tricks is insanely rewarding. It has that classic Sonic style of encouraging better performance. The higher paths are undoubtedly harder to get to, but reward the skill required to get to them through rewarding more points. Same applies to Jinsei Lane and the bus terminal and practically any level you can think of in Tokyo-to. The amount of thought and near invisible complexity that's been jammed into each level is astonishing to me. Just noticing stuff like this is there isn't enough though. Proper execution of getting across pieces of the level like this is some of the most satisfying stuff that can happen in a video game for me. Doing something risky and having it pay off to get you away from the cops. Finally nailing a jump you've been unable to do before consistently. Finally understanding how this game's skating and levels work. Finally catching the
Butterfly.
Hey, all you freaks out there. This is the one and only bona fide DJ Professor Kent. Don't adjust your set and don't take that pretty little face of yours away from the boob tube. Because we'll be right back after this commercial.
Hi, I'm John Business. I'm currently working on my biggest video ever, which is to come out after this one, and if you want to help financially support that, you can through my Ko-Fi page. In order to preserve my autistic vision with this video, it unfortunately had to get demonetized, so if you've enjoyed this in any way, it would be greatly appreciated. I have a video going up with this one exclusive in my Ko-Fi membership where I review the jank port to the Game Boy Advance Jet Set Radio got for some reason. They start at just $1 and also make you green if you're on my channel's Discord server. Green like money. Okay, thanks for your time. Goodbyes.
And to all the Rudies out there, we are back with more Jet Set Radio!
So I think by now I've talked enough about the individual levels of Jet Set Radio. If you haven't been able to tell, I quite like a lot of the areas in Tokyo-to, but I've been talking about all of them as they are for a majority of the first chapter of the game. How this game goes for most of the first chapter is go into a level in a rival gang's territory, spray paint everything that has red arrows over it, occasionally play Simon Says versus a guy who looks like he eats sand, and repeat for a majority of the first act. But after you clear all of the stages and claim a specific part of the map as your own, you unlock this high score version of the stages called Jet Graffiti. Now, when I first played this game, I had no idea what this was. I thought this was just going to be a point A to point B kind of campaign, so I checked it out pretty much as soon as I unlocked it. And this was my holy shit, I love this game moment for my playthrough. Every part of each province has all been combined into one level. Yeah, Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast was also one of the first open zone games. In the high score based levels, as well as the later ones in the game, instead of traversing Kogane, Ben 10, and Shibuya as individual levels, each province is combined into one. There are certain parts of the city I haven't brought up until now that all serve to connect these areas. Shibuya has this massive drain system that moves through the entire city, as well as this plaza I've shown previously. Kogane is largely interconnected through the use of the sewer system. There's ways for actual people to walk between these spaces, but as a Rudy, your only access is through the sewers, which have tubes and systems running to literally every location on the map. And then Ben 10 doesn't really have an interconnecting area like this. It has a train station and a subway system which connects more separated areas with one another, like Route 0 to the big unnameable circle, but for the most part, Ben 10 is kind of built in a giant loop. The thing I love about all of this game's little connected parts is that every province kind of has different designs to how all of it works. Shibuya has two connections with the plaza and the ditch that runs across the entire city. The water drain might take longer for you to get across from one side of Shibuya to the other, but its end is at the very top of Center Street, while the plaza entrance is at the very bottom, meaning if you take the pipe instead of going through the main roads, you could cut down on heading to the top. It's the most consumerized area of Tokyo-to. Of course it has easy connections from one area to another, unlike Kogane, which is majorly broken up through the sewers, with several entrances leading to the sewers from most areas, and usually one massive pipe leading out of there to different sectors. Like there's a sewer entrance right at the bottom of the residential area, as well as a manhole cover being missing at the very top, also leading down. There's a service entrance through a door in Kibogaka. There's an entrance right in the middle of the construction site. Everything kind of has strings that tied to this area at the bottom of Kogane. And finally, Ben 10, which is pretty sparse with these spaces that connect everything. There's train tracks and a subway system that connects some spaces to one another, like I've said previously. But for the most part in Ben 10, if you want to get from one area to another, there's usually little transitionary pieces of the stage that lead there, unlike the other levels that have massive parts of the location dedicated to it. Like Jinsei Lane has this little underground walkway leading to Route 0, and an access to the train station which leads to... I hope it isn't obvious I forgot its name. I like all of the different structures they came up with for how to maneuver through each different area. And that's of course ignoring how cool this is. I love the ability to just be skating in Kibogaka then burst through a window leading to the residential area. This does feel a tiny bit outdated though, if I'm going to be honest. Like yeah, each part of Kogane is connected through a shittily masked loading screen themed hexabug maze. But for the time, you gotta do what you gotta do to make it work, and at the very least, they made it work. Even if it is pretty obvious what they had to do. By the way, you've probably noticed how I've been referring to each individual part of the city with its own name, like the residential area, Route 0, Park Street, and despite all these really cool names, the game has absolutely no interest in telling you any of them. The only reason I know them is because I looked it up, because the police radar transmissions. Here's another thing I love about this game's levels, and by extension its world. It's very clear the amount of desperation the metropolitan law enforcement has. At the very start, there are just these basic beat cops. These guys really only serve to introduce the police as a whole. They can tackle you, grab onto you, preventing you from spraying. The worst they can can do is just get in your way. Then there's the SWAT team, which is a step above them. Instead of just running at you, they have tear gas, which makes you run slower for a little bit and absolutely tanks your health. And speaking of tanks, for most of the levels through Benten and Shibuya, they'll mainly stick to the SWAT team in Onishima, but for the last levels of these two, as well as pretty much all of Kogane, they pull out the big guns. Paratroopers, military helicopters, goddamn tanks. All of these are deployed in their efforts to stop you. Most of these are just strict hazards you need to avoid, no ifs, ands, or buts, but that's not entirely true for all of them. For a choice few of them, you actually have the ability to fight back. Onishima is in pretty much every level of Chapter 1 and is the most aggressive out of all of the fuzz. But for him specifically, if you manage to knock him over, you can actually spray his back, causing him to get distracted for a while, leaving you alone. And for the only other one you can actually attack back for Chapter 1, is probably one of the funniest goddamn things in the whole game. Like, the subject matter is serious, but they absolutely realize the absurdity of spraying the front of a police helicopter with spray paint and watching it crash and catch on fire. I really like how limited your ability to fight back in this game feels, though. It makes them feel like tangible threats to your objective of gaining territory. Like, no, you can't jump on the SWAT team's heads and have them all flatten out. They are real people who want to really kill you with tear gas. You're just a kid, you can't fucking fight that. It's not that the game makes you feel powerless, more that it makes you feel real. Of course you aren't gonna win in a fight against a tank. You're wearing a jumpsuit and you look like a cob. How'd that tear gas taste, Tab? Tastes like fascism? The fact that the best way to deal with most threats is to avoid them at all costs feels empowering in the way that it doesn't give you power. You're not a superpowered kick-ass protagonist with the ability to topple the government by themselves. You're a Rudy, a rebellious kid hell-bent on expressing themselves. It's just such a unique and cool feel. You aren't powerless per se, but you aren't powerful either. But in terms of the Metropolitan Police, that's where it ends. But that's not to say it doesn't get more ramped up as the game goes on. But for pretty much all of Tokyo-to in Chapter 1, that is the full extent of the level designs. With the enemies and layouts, I mean. I say it's finally time we talk about more of the levels of Chapter 1 that aren't just the basic tagging graffiti spot levels. Specifically to the other types of levels we haven't talked about yet. The tagging missions against rival gangs, which I'll save for their own segment, and the character unlock missions. You know what, screw it, this has enough mileage to where I can make a chapter about the Most of Chapter 1 plays out where you'll be moving from level to level, pretty openly going between whichever level you want to deal with in which order. Ultimately, it doesn't really affect anything that you can go in any order. There's no Mega Man system built in where going in a specific pattern is the best way to go about things. I just kind of go with what feels right 90% of the time. There is one thing that changes, however, and that's what characters unlock when. Like, gameplay-wise, who cares who's tied to each level? But it feels really neat from the viewpoint of it being a living, breathing world. Like, there are people living in these areas seeing how cool you are and wanting to join you. For specifically Chapter 1, you get 3 new characters on top of the 3 base GGs. Mew, Yo-Yo, and Garim. Garim appears after you beat the first level of Kogane, Mew after the first level of Benten, and then Yo-Yo after every level in Benten has been beat. After you fulfill these requirements, they'll appear in the window of the GG's hideout and ask to fight to see if you're cool enough to warrant them joining. And when they say fight, they mean playing Simon Says. These competitions against these rivals, as the game puts it, takes 2 forms. Little challenges where you'll copy their tricks in various levels, and races where you'll go through the entirety of an area of the game and try to get to the other side and tag a spot before they can. The Simon Says missions are pretty fun the first time around, but on repeat playthroughs they get pretty annoying, honestly. These are really good for the first playthrough though. Specifically in Chapter 1, these are used for Garim and Mew stages, which are done in the same province you have to go through in order for them to appear. So Garim will be in Kogane, Mew in Benten, you get it. I like these because they're kind of teaching you different tricks and paths you could take instead of the obvious ones. Like for my first time playing through the game in level 1 of Kogane, I followed the pretty obvious looking path of going through these houses to loop around upwards, then only to have Garim come in and show me that same wall grind I was talking about earlier, or how Mew shows you how you can properly go down this rail from the tower in the first level of Benten. They even show you the later areas like the sewers and the bridges over the train yard. Cool at showing new players what different areas have in store, really damn boring for repeat playthroughs. They only take a few minutes at most, luckily, depending on independent player suckage amounts, so they're not the worst thing in the world, just kind of annoying. The ones I really like though are the races. These are great at challenging your knowledge of an area. Like when Yo-Yo asks you to go from the train yard to the top of Jinsei Lane without taking the path directly there from the trains. It's pretty up to you to navigate that for yourself. The game isn't going to give you a big arrow to follow. No, it's your responsibility to get there yourself, and that's really cool. Now, after you beat one of these rivals at their challenge, they'll join you in the garage, and then you can play as them from then on. Also a great time to talk about the GG's garage. Even what is just essentially a menu in Jet Set Radio is stylized to the extreme. This is where you'll be able to access pretty typical menu stuff. What level you're going to next, who you're playing as, system settings. There are some cool things in here though, like the internet. Bet that'll work 25 years later for me on a ROM. And one of its only features outside the obvious level selection and character changing, the graffiti tab. Scattered throughout the levels are little collectibles awarding you for doing platforming challenges known as graffiti souls. There's dozens of these things everywhere, and they're nice incentives to get better at platforming, since nabbing one rewards you with a new graffiti to use. Legitimately tons of designs to switch between, each one correlating to a different soul. You can even make your own if you want to. I'm a horrible artist, so I never did, but the option is cool. Shout out to everybody who draws for me, so I don't have to learn an actual skill. The ways you can express yourself through the different graffiti used in the game is so cool to me, which is only exemplified through the characters. All of these funky kids chill around the garage, Fortnite emoting, and dressed like how Back to the Future 2 thought 2014 would look. I genuinely love every character design in this game. I'm so serious. Tab with his big ass lips and almost visor looking beanie. Yo-Yo with his shit-eating grin and massive neon green hoodie. Mew looking overdressed no matter where she is. Garam with his crazy ass goggles and his crazy ass. Everybody looks so unique. No matter what, you'll find somebody amongst their ranks you gravitate towards. Not just character-wise, but also gameplay-wise. Every character has a unique set of stats exclusive to them that make them all play differently. You're looking at power, technique, and graffiti. Each character has 3 stats with different percentages between 1 and 100 with how good they are at each. Power is the most self-explanatory, just gauging how much health your character has, no need to divulge further. Graffiti dictates how complex their graffiti technique will be. If a character has low graffiti, the technique is probably just a few lines each cycle, with only the last couple being even slightly challenging. With the higher stats giving crazy ass patterns to do. But with the more complex patterns means you'll also get more points from the graffitis as well. So yeah, those jet ranks pretty much require whoever you have that has the highest graffiti. And then there's technique. I kid you not, I have played this game numerous times across several different pieces of hardware. I have done immersive amounts of research into this video, and I still have no fucking clue what technique does. From my own personal playing through the games, I'm not sure what about it, but the higher technique characters seem to be easier to control, so clearly something's going on here. Stealing verbatim from the Jet Set Radio wiki, apparently refers to the speed they go at and their cornering, so they can turn around easier and go faster. It might seem weird that I'm specifically denoting that I had to look this up, but this is genuinely one of the only things to this game I needed to Google. Predictably, since there's 3 stats, they really mix and match who is good with what. So Beat, the first character you unlock, is a very good all-rounder. Kind of predictable since he's on the box, really just the Mario of this game. Tab is an excellent starter character based off his solid health and high technique with poor graffiti. The lesser graffiti making easier patterns for newcomers. Gum has great graffiti and technique, but dies if you look at her funny. These stats in all actuality don't affect that much. Like, Tab really only feels so different compared to Beat, then Beat to Yo-Yo, then Yo-Yo to Garam, and so on. But with the unique stats and personality every character brings to the table, I never find me just throwing myself at one character consistently because I don't care. I always found myself switching between whoever because all of them look so damn cool. The majority of the characters really don't get personalization or really any dialogue outside of their Mario-esque sound effects. So it's really up to these character designs and animations to make them stick out, and I think they do all of that just fine. Still though, I would have really liked if at least a few characters got some actual screen time. Like, I'm just gonna go vibe-based personalities for all of the ones we have in Chapter 1 real quick. Would eat something he dropped on the ground in public. There's no way he doesn't smoke something. Has definitely lied about her age. Has punched a child in public. Convinces Yo-Yo it's okay to say the N-word. Convinces Garam it's okay to eat sand, and has said the N-word. If I had to give you a top 3 of my favorite characters of this game, it's honestly pretty damn close, but I would probably say Garam, Yo-Yo, and then somebody else we should probably start moving towards, actually. Right, enough about this character mumbo-jumbo. Back to these other levels I haven't discussed. After getting through all of the levels of Chapter 1 in a specific province, you have to go face down with the gang of the area. You can either do the noise tanks first or poison jam first. And no matter what, you have to end it with the love shockers. Yeah, so this game isn't flawless. I absolutely adore this game, and I mean it with the utmost amount of love when I say this game has aged fucking horribly. At least for the Dreamcast version, which we are talking about. You remember when I said we would talk about the camera later? Yeah, it's finally time to. The camera of Jet Set Radio might be one of the most finicky and bullshitty cameras I have ever used in a video game. So as I've said, hitting the L trigger will cause the camera to center itself behind you, as well as it being the spray paint button, which is fine considering considering it's not often you'll have to use these two in conjunction with one another. And if they kept that design philosophy through the entire game, I feel like it would have been a lot more positive towards the camera mechanics. The final levels of each province in Tokyo require the use of both of these in conjunction. So how these levels work is that there are 3 members of each gang, and all of them are running away from you to different parts of the level, all following very similar but slightly different paths to the other members. And you need to spray paint their backs 10 times each. But it doesn't work like the QuickTime event ones. These are the small graffitis that are on their backs, just requiring it to be sprayed a bunch. So every time you go to spray one of their backs, the camera will recenter. And since it's the small graffiti, the most effective way of spraying these guys as fast as possible is to mash the L button. And Viola, through this combination of unfortunate design choices and hardware limitations, you're now jerking off the cameraman. Look, I get why the camera is like this. There's no right analog stick. But I really feel like they should have reworked how the current tagging missions work, because these are very annoying. And unfortunately, this isn't the end of the camera problems. So sometimes the game will have the decision of having a cinematic view to a certain jump in a level, like jumping across this gap in Kogane, across this bridge in Shibuya, down this rail in Ben 10. I'm honestly not a huge fan of these cinematic shots. At best, these are just kind of cool looking, if not a little annoying for repeat playthroughs of levels, since they'll show you the cutscene again if you restart the level. And at worst, they are actively jeopardizing. I don't know if this is just a me problem, but I feel that drastically shifting where the camera is positioned in the middle of a tricky jump to do an ultra sick replay isn't exactly the best thing when it comes to landing that jump. I kind of got used to this over time, so a lot of the footage I'm showing doesn't really have it being that detrimental to my gameplay. But during my first playthrough, this constantly screwed me up. Finally nailing a jump only for the camera to be yanked away from you and risk messing up your landing isn't exactly a super cool addition to your skating-based precision platformer. Another case where this rears its ugly head is during pretty much all of the small graffiti spots. The small graffitis are typically placed in more challenging spots for you to reach. This wall in the construction zone, along the Kibogaka rooftops, up a lot of the down drain pipes uses rails in Jinsei Lane, going downhill on Center Street where you're probably moving stupidly fast. These are really good spots for these, considering all you have to do is hit L and they're sprayed. The only thing that unfortunately screws up a lot of these is the camera will suddenly shift to face you at the graffiti you just sprayed instead of where you're headed. Meaning in some circumstances, the game will just force the camera away from where you're headed to look at this cool thing you just made on a wall. Thankfully, this is a very rare annoyance, but when it actually does something, it's very annoying. And finally, the last place the game forces the camera out of your hands and starts playing with it is during when the police enters the stage after a certain amount of graffiti. This is a lot less common considering you yourself trigger it by finishing spraying a spot, but during some levels like the construction site in Kogane, it can really throw you off considering a lot of small graffitis in the stage are where you'll be wall grinding, which of course has a very tiny window for you to keep on that wall. So throwing an unskippable cutscene in the middle of my epic skateboarding trick I feel isn't exactly the greatest thing. I must admit this is a far more niche example like the small graffitis, but that doesn't mean it won't happen at least once to you. I love this game, but loving something also comes with acknowledging its faults, and this has got to be the biggest one for me. Luckily, the camera recentering is usually only a big issue when it's in a very cramped space. Guess where you fight Poison Jam, idiot. The sewers are usually fine enough to traverse, but oh my god, this is hell with Poison Jam here. It's honestly not the worst thing in the world when it's the noise tanks in Route 0 of Ben 10, but when the level is already hella cramped due to the walls of the sewers and you're having to mash L to spray Poison Jam, and you're trying to make your way around these obstacles on the half pipes, it can get pretty damn stupid. Thankfully, I would say this level is by far the worst the game gets with the camera, fortunately. The tagging missions with the Love Shockers on Center Street actually aren't that bad, just having the same problems I did with the noise tanks. I don't hate the tagging missions, but I really would have preferred if they reworked these in some way that would have been way more appropriate with the control scheme they cooked up. Hell, or just redesigned the control scheme altogether. If you would allow me to go off for a minute, here's 2 ideas I came up with for how to change the camera for this game. For starters, I would map running to the B button instead of the right trigger. It's only a few seconds of speed until you have to rely on momentum again. I don't think this would be that intrusive considering any instance where you're going to want to jump you probably can't run anyways, like rail grinding or being on a wall. Then you can move the spray paint action to the right trigger and keep the camera center on the left one. Boom! Just like that, the tagging missions are completely playable. They would probably become actual fun. Or for another idea I came up with to alleviate the camera trouble, is to remove the center button altogether. Then put moving the camera to the left on the X button and moving it to the right in the B button. Because I'm not sure if this was obvious or not, but all of the face buttons except for A are unused. Yes, I realize I just reinvented the camera and Mario 64, which people also hate. But damn it, the controllers have nearly the same problem, so I'm doing my best. I feel like my first solution would be better, but just for a bit more freedom with the camera, solution B isn't bad. I, in no means, intend to shit on the developers with these complaints, by the way. This game was made in a total of like 10 months. I couldn't imagine they had a super large amount of time for field testing. It's just that now in the modern day, the camera has some very obvious struggles. But if I'm being honest, thankfully, this is my only really big complaint I have with the game. Doesn't mean I don't have more, but we're not there yet. Earlier I mentioned that you're forced to do the Love Shockers tagging mission as the last level of Chapter 1. But why is that? Well, after defeating Poison Jam, they drop a piece of a weird broken record, and after this they get kidnapped in the construction zone. And it turns out that the noise tanks have a matching piece to that broken record. So it comes to suspicion that the Love Shockers, after they're defeated, don't have a piece of the broken record, but instead drop a mysterious golden rhinoceros badge, where the game gives us some more exposition onto what's really going on. The Golden Rhinos are a group of, as the game puts it, ruthless Asian killers. So the Yakuza. And the only other thing in Tokyo related to the Golden Rhinos is the Rokaku group, run by a man known as Goji Rokaku. Something I love about the world of this game I purposely didn't bring up until now is how well the Rokaku are foreshadowed. Half of the trucks and buildings and pretty much everything have the Rokaku symbol on them, showing how much of the city is actually controlled by this conglomerate. The crackdown on the Rudies seem to be part of their big Rokaku Project 2000, as they call it. But as I see it, it's their way of dealing with all of the unfavorables in Tokyo, and such have been erasing loads of GG graffiti. This is where the plot of the game actually starts to show its head, with the start of Chapter 2 and the introduction of literally the coolest motherfucker ever put in a video game. After you're given all this cool exposition, you're thrown back into the garage where you're notified that a new rival is approaching. Or specifically, two new rivals. Those two being Cube and Combo. These guys are here to join the GGs in order to save their friend Coin. Who the hell is that? What the hell is going on? Why are there suddenly two Americans in this very Japanese game? Well, to answer that, I need to talk about this game's...
It's like this when the law said let it be light. He also designated poetical brothers with mics for whoever had the skills to possess the gift. Combinated with the flavor and it go like this. Tuna fish.
So I've said it a few times already, but this game was made in a very short period of time. But if you haven't noticed, that number has changed throughout the course of this video. In Japan, this game was fully developed within 10 months, releasing in June of 2000. But over here in North America, it was released on October 31st of 2000. Now, games back then taking their sweet time to get localized wasn't uncommon, but there was a very grounded reason behind this one. To most of my viewers who are definitely English speaking, this has probably been a very sugoi, kawaii, white guy wearing Japanese clothes kind of video. And if you had that thought, then you would be Sega after this game released in Japan. Sega was kind of scared that this game would be unappealing to Westerners, considering all of it took place in a country none of them are in. So they asked Smilebit to create new levels based off locations in America. In 2 months. For this game's localization, they added new cutscenes, massively changed 2 characters, added an entirely new part of the story at the midway point, and added 2 new levels based off of New York, with Bantam Street based off of the Bronx, and Grind Square based off of New York City. And Combo and Cube in this version of the game comes from Grind City, where those 2 areas are located. So pretty blatantly, there's some huge localization differences between the Japanese and US versions of this game. So much so that they even made the English version its own separate game in Japan after it came out in the US. De La Jet Set Radio is the US version converted back into Japanese. This was a Japanese game brought over to the US, which the US version was then brought over to Japan. What the hell is even happening anymore? Did you know Tab was called fucking corn over there? I think it's best if we start the localization discussion by talking about the biggest one though, and that being the new chapter. As I've said, Cube and Combo appear as 2 new rivals at the window of the GG garage, and instead of fighting them and them joining, you're actually playing as them fighting the GGs. Nice change of pace. I thought this was really cool and emphasized how these two would probably be very important. We have Cube, who is a goth girl with a really cute voice. I like her, definitely a top 5. And the objective main character of the game. You might say it's Beat, and yeah, sure, he's pretty much the poster boy for this game. He's on the box, he's in all the collabs, but in any other video game, in any other context, this guy would unanimously be seen as the main character. Combo is this this absolute fucking wall of a man. Just look at this dude. I'm obsessed with his design. A pretty simple jacket and a bucket hat with a lime undershirt, and this boombox he always carries with him. It just makes him instantly stand out. I love it. That and that he's the second biggest character outside of this Squidward looking guy in chapter 3. These two want to join the GGs for the sake of coin, and they aren't looking for money. Now, why do I say Combo is the main character?
Grind City, my turf. My name's Combo, and me, Cube, and Coin used to own the Bantam Street area in this city.
That's why. Not only is he the only character with actual read out loud dialogue that you can play as, but he's also the only character with a narrative going on specific to them. He almost sounds like this detective kind of sleuth archetype. He's genuinely so cool. He was my favorite character from earlier, by the way, if you couldn't have guessed. Anyways, Combo, Cube, and Coin are all from America, and as explained through this flashback narration from Combo, Coin has been kidnapped. And Combo's following the paper trail of proof to find out his whereabouts, which first leads him to Bantam Street. Enough preamble, let's talk about the new levels. I fucking hate them. As I discussed a minute ago, these were made over the period of this game's localization. It was a little over 3 months. So on top of making these 2 new levels, they also had to license a bunch of new music, hire all new voice actors, get an actual voice actor for Combo that doesn't just make wahoo noises, write a new storyline with all this stuff going on, and finally make 2 brand new levels. So I completely understand why Bantam Street and Grind Square are pretty underdeveloped, and I'm not at all blaming the developers for this or anybody who helped make these games. Still gonna whine about it. Jesus Christ, these levels are insufferable. So both of these introduce the new threat of the Golden Rhinos, those ruthless Asian killers we already went over, but now are here and are impossible. They have the same progression that the police had, where more powerful units would show up after a certain amount of graffiti had been done. So the guys who spawn right at the start of the stage are pretty much just basic cops from Tokyo-to. They're pretty manageable, but then they start calling in the assassins. All of the different more powerful troops have different numbers to them, but I don't remember them and I don't care. Bantam Street has these dudes with electric whips, and they're absolutely unavoidable. Their range is obscene, and of course they only spawn in the areas with graffitis that take more than one input to do. These guys make it impossible, I swear. And that's not even to comment on the rest of the level. Unlike everywhere in Tokyo-to, it feels like it's very broken up, like it's kind of split off into 3 different sections. Over on top of these rooftops, which look goddamn barren, this road underneath the train with more rooftops next to it, then the skate park. I will give it this level aesthetically looks very clean. As someone who lives in America and has been across a lot of the Eastern Shore, yeah, places really do look like this. Just less condensed, I suppose, but that's more of a video game kind of thing. Still though, this is a pretty good design for suburban America. You've got a little gas station up here, construction going on slightly down the street, trains shuttling people around. They even had the attention to detail to include more racially diverse NPCs considering we're in America now. Really well done all around aesthetically. This level design sucks ass. The rooftops off to the left side of the stage are completely barren and uninteresting looking. This train area is very finicky to get to because it keeps kicking you off the rail too soon. The skate part is actually very well designed, if not having some devious ass graffiti locations. Everything feels just so disjointed, like this was 4 separate ideas for levels they kind of just jammed into one. Also, while I'm on this topic, I know cars aren't exclusive to this area, but there's no way I can't mention this while I have the chance, and I'm already complaining. It's not very common when it happens, but for our casual playthrough, I guarantee you this will happen at least once. So sometimes when you get hit by a car, you'll get thrown up on the hood of it. And since all of the drivers here drive like they're native to Philadelphia, they won't stop. And if one of those cars is heading towards a level exit and you don't have enough time to get off the hood before it gets there, it will force you out of the level. Me and my boyfriend, while we did our first playthroughs, called this getting jet set radioed. Getting forcibly dragged by your legs into the pits of hell by some random car for no reason is, depending on the level, either the funniest or the most frustrating thing that can happen. You can be right near the end and one of these stupid ass cars will just ferry you back to the garage with no chance of putting up a fight. I really wish these level exits weren't here. I really don't see a reason for them to exist. You can quit the level through the pause menu. I feel like they should have just put an invisible wall where cars enter and exit. It would have been a lot less obtrusive. I will give them points for the funniness factor though. And that's pretty much it for Bantam Street. This and the next one aren't open zone like Tokyo-to because they're only 1 level each, so it not really having that much is fine, I guess. But it just kind of feels like there's nothing going on for most of this level. I mean, it looks nice, but it fluctuates between being annoying and boring. This is my least favorite level in in the game, which is probably very surprising to most Jet Set fans that might be listening to this, because the next level is unanimously considered to be the worst level in the entire franchise. So Combo, and also Cube, because she's also here but nobody cares because it's combo time, discovers that Coin left some graffiti telling them to go to Grind Square, and that he's been kidnapped by the Golden Rhinos, so that's where they head to next. Unironically and wholeheartedly, people absolutely despise Grind Square, and I 100% understand why. This is the first and thankfully last vertical stage of the game. How does a vertical stage work in a game with rail-based momentum? The simple answer is that it doesn't. They have these vertical lifts that take you upwards in order to get to the top so you can grind back down. But here's the thing, every time you go back down, either through falling or grinding to other graffiti spots, you'll have to take one of these lifts all the way back up. And remember that cutscene issue I was mentioning with the cops earlier? You have to watch these stupid Orkaku thugs stomp on the ground in anger every time you go back up. And by the way, something I really didn't mention because it wasn't relevant at the time is that for a new player, these rail hitboxes can be really damn small. So falling off, especially on a first playthrough, is going to happen countlessly. I specify on a first playthrough because even me now playing this game still falls off a good 5 to 6 times. And not just because of the rail collision. The camera on this map is probably at its worst. The small graffitis dragging the camera away on these center spots makes it impossible to time the next jump. I am serious. In the assassins in this level, oh my god, the assassins in this level. So we have attack helicopters now, which is nothing new. But the new assassin type are these guys who camp on the rails and send electricity through them. And if it touches you, it immediately knocks you off. You can't do anything about these guys, you just have to cope. This level is genuinely unfair. That doesn't mean I hate it. Honestly, through all of my playthroughs of this game, I've kind of come around to Grind Square. Yeah, what a great payoff to that rant. Yeah, it's really damn hard and unfair, and the assassins can suck my ass. But I can't deny how fun it is to land 3 jumps in a row across these buildings. I know I'm in the minority of Jet Set fans when I say this, but honestly, I liked it more than Bantam Street. That level is just boring and unfun, and honestly, I'd take unfair over unfun. Fortunately, these 2 levels are the worst the game gets, and are also like my only other complaint about the game. And I can't even fault the developers or the game itself for these 2 problems. Being a camera system that didn't work because of hardware limitations, and levels that weren't fun because they had to be made on borrowed time. I really don't think anybody is at fault for the problems in the game. But I love this game too much to not talk about everything, and talking about everything means acknowledging its faults. Everything they tried and wanted to do with this game landed and worked so damn well. So it's unfortunate to say that there are some things in there that hold it back when really it didn't have to be like this. And that's pretty much all of the exclusive stuff. There are some other exclusive things I'll probably be talking about in like 8 minutes, but that's more relevant in a little bit. I like the story overall, and Combo is such an incredible character in the English version of the game. The levels do leave some to be asked for, but overall, I think there's some pretty solid additions. But how about the rest of those localization changes? Well, since Cube and Combo were originally part of the rivals you could just fight regularly, who you fight and where has been switched up a bit. Some are still where they're supposed to be, like Garam and Yo-Yo, but Mew in the English version is where Cube is supposed to be in the Japanese one, which honestly makes a lot of sense. Cube is a goth girl wearing mostly black clothing, of course she would live in Ben 10. Mew honestly feels pretty out of place here when you think about it. Like, why is the girl wearing the most vibrant and expressive colors in the darkest city out of all of them? She was originally in Kogane, which checks out pretty well. All of the original character placements for the Japanese version are honestly significantly better. This isn't like the hugest deal in the world, but it just feels nice knowing where you fight these guys is on their home turf and having them feel like it. Like, doesn't Garam look like he plays in the sewers? And while we're talking about Cube, she is drastically different looking in the American version. In the American release, she's wearing a black crop top, fingerless gloves, and tight pants. While in the Japanese version, she has rolled up jeans, fingerless sleeves instead of fingerless gloves, and a fire print around her neck and arms. I guess this change was to make her look more American, I guess? I honestly can't really think of why they would alter how she looks so drastically, especially considering I like the Japanese version more. The rolled up jeans look really cool. Other than that, there's a bunch of changed graffitis, predictable name changes, some OST tweaks that really just felt like they were randomly removing one song per version, and a bunch of little less interesting things that I don't really feel like are worth being discussed. But there is one big change that the English version of the game made. Somehow, the tagging missions in the Japanese version are worse! The tagging missions in the US version have all 3 members of the rival gang grouped together as one. Then as you get close to them, they all split off going in the same direction, just slightly differently, and then once they arrive at where they're going, they all stand still, giving the player a chance to catch up. Well, this was their patch on top of how this originally worked. Because how this worked in the Japanese release is all of them scattering in different directions randomly like bugs when you lift up a rock. I'm not even sure their AI pathfinding works properly because so many times during my playthrough of the Japanese version, they would just bug the fuck out and stand in random corners. Or do this.
Just the fact that they don't fucking stop.
You bastard, come back. Why are you going up here?
What? What?
Okay.
Nah, that's going in the video. That's fucked up.
That's going in the video. That bitch Pied Pipered me! So you know what, in retrospect, maybe the tagging missions weren't that bad, because oh my god, I didn't know how bad they could be. And if this needs to be said again, yes, I know this game was made in like 5 hours. I'm not mad at any of the people who made this game. Anyway, let's get back to the actual game now. Closing out Chapter 2, Combo learns it was the Rikaku who kidnapped Coin and finds out their home base is in Tokyo-to. And like a man looking for a knockoff Windows sign, he has no other choice but to head to Japan, and joins up with the GGs in order to go save him. And that's where things converge back with the Japanese version. The rest of the game from here on, barring some differences in rival fights, is entirely the same. Chapter 3 kicks off the last chapter of the game, and since we're nearing the end, I want to talk about what I've been saving for my final subject I've been waiting with bated breath to talk about. What I feel is the most integral part of Jet Set Radio. It's the
Music just turns me on.
Most of you probably already know this, but this game's soundtrack fucks so hard. Jet Set Radio is a good game that plenty of people know, but I feel like more people have heard this game's music and sound design more than they know the game exists. Watching somebody who has never played this game before and knew nothing about it was a treat, because every 5 minutes they were just going, wait, that's where that's from? The music of this game is so special, not even looking at the songs themselves yet. When they were designing the characters of Jet Set Radio, they were inspired by the headphones that Beat was wearing to make all of the music contextualized by playing through an in-game radio station. Hey, take what I literally just said with a grain of salt, because I made this video while moving and for some reason I didn't write down where I got that information, so I could literally just be making that up, but it sounds real enough to where I'm leaving it in and I don't care. Hosted by my actual favorite character in the game. I know everyone's been waiting for me to bring him up, so it's finally time we talk about DJ Professor K. Professor K is a radio DJ who kind of serves as this game's narrator. After every level, he'll pop in for a broadcast to talk about what's going on in the world of Tokyo-to. He'll comment about what the different gangs are doing while making jokes here and there, and all of these are really damn fun to watch. K has this energy about him that makes all of these broadcasts, no matter how many times they play, so entertaining. Like every time he starts up a new broadcast, he'll have a new intro gag every time.
Martians come all the way to Earth just to listen to us. We're Tokyo's finest pirate radio, Jet Set Radio! We'll leave your mama gawking and your daddy walking. We're Tokyo's biggest, baddest buccaneers. We're Jet Set Radio. We're gonna blast your blues with a burst of pure sound. This is your very own one-punch knockout broadcaster, Jet Set Radio. Which one of you punks want to step in the ring?
Pretty much every Rudy listens to this guy because he's always got his ear to the streets. He somehow always seems to know what's going on. Maybe he's got guys on the street telling him what's going on, maybe he's just a good listener. No matter the case, he reports everything that happens on the streets. Like at one point in the game, the GG's dog, known as Potts, who I haven't mentioned, gets kidnapped by one of the noise tanks. And he somehow manages to learn about this. Another thing I love about all of the info he throws at you is that it's really unbiased. He's as much on the GG's side as he is on the noise tanks or the love shockers or poison jams. He'll report on who's attacking who, but he isn't rooting for any specific side to win. It's a really cool feeling having the world of Jet Set Radio treat you like every other person. If we were playing as the noise tanks throughout the entire campaign, the GGs would be viewed exactly the same. It's awesome. I love him so much. He definitely has the most personalization in the game. Like, we don't really know what this guy's deal is, but we sure as hell know how cool he is. I feel personally that DJ Professor K is the beating heart of Jet Set Radio, and not just the in-game radio station called Jet Set Radio. I'm talking about the whole game. I'm sure it would be just as suitable if we were told by Gum or someone what the current standings in Tokyo-to are, but I don't think they would have been nearly as effective effective as this guy doing them. The charm these cutscenes bring to the game is absolutely unparalleled.
This is Tokyo's guerrilla music broadcaster, Jet Set Radio! Let's go to the mailbag. A letter from Mr. Osaki asks, how do I get rid of these nasty roaches? Easy, just burn your house down. We got another letter from Osaki. He says, I burned my house down. What should I do now? How should I know, fool?
But arguably the greatest thing Kay does is mixing all of the music you hear in game. Obviously that's an in-universe thing. Unfortunately, he isn't real. No, the person who made the majority of the music you hear in-game is none other than the most notable person associated with Jet Set Radio. The short-time DJ, long-time composer, full-time funny man, the man whose name's been all over this video. You probably already know what I'm about to say. He's not an unknown figure. Hideki Naganuma. Most music you hear associated with this game is most probably created by him. This isn't a video or even a segment about Hideki specifically, so I'll save you on the long sprawl backstory, but to sum it up,
The sights, the sounds, they're everywhere and all around. I've never felt so good before. This empty place inside of me is filling up. I simply cannot get enough.
if you've listened to any song that is even in spitting distance of hip-hop from the 90s, then you'll know a little thing about sampling. Sampling, if it wasn't already self-explanatory from the name, is the art of taking a sound effect or snippet of audio from a different source and using a sample of it in your own song. Just for the example, let's take a look at some of the more popular instances of sampling in music history. Here's a snippet of the David Matthews song Space Oddity, released in 1977. And now here is MF Doom's Rap Snitch Knishes, released in 2004.
Rap snitches, telling all their business. Sit in the court and be their own star witness. Do you see the perpetrator? Yeah, I'm right here. Fuck around, get the whole label sent up for years.
For those of us with keen ears, you probably noticed that the backing beat of Rap Snitch Knishes is that small bit of guitar I played from David Matthews' song, with just some audio tweaks here and there to it. Doom's song sampled a small snippet of David Matthews to create something entirely new out of it. The bridge of I Got The from Libby Sefri is then sampled and turned into the main backing beat of the song My Name Is from Eminem. Voice clips from One Step Ahead by Aretha Franklin are used in the intro to Mos Def's Don't Laugh, Don't Laugh, Don't Laugh, Don't Laugh, Mrs. Fat Booty. Sampling was an integral part of hip-hop and rap of the time, and artists, including but not limited to Hideki Naganuma, loved this. And sampling, like I've been mentioning, is found all over his work. Let's look at some examples from songs he composed on the soundtrack. But before we do, thank you to Dave's Voice Hub for compiling all of these. Probably wouldn't have found like any of these without this video, so go check it out if you want to look at literally every sample used in this game's soundtrack instead of the ones I'm just cherry picking for examples. But let's take a look at some samples taken from other people's works.
Yes? Would you stop playing with that radio of yours? I'm trying to get to sleep. Some of us have to go to work in the morning. Could you stop playing with that radio of yours? I'm trying to get to sleep.
He's a sweet soul, brother. He's a sweet soul, brother. Sweet, sweet soul, brother. He's a sweet soul, brother. Sweet, sweet soul.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Dance while the record spins.
and plenty other examples. And that's not even to mention the amount of samples taken from sample CDs. You know, actually, screw that. Skip to 1 hour, 7 minutes, and 20 seconds into the OG data file volume 2, and you'll hear literally 3 samples used in Jet Set back to back.
This is most disturbing. This is most disturbing.
I don't understand what's going on here. I don't understand what's going on here.
Let's look at the funk.
Let's look at the funk.
I swear, he would have sampled from the Kennedy assassination if he could get away with it. And it's not just Hideki alone on the soundtrack doing this. The track Everybody Jump Around, I constantly see incorrectly credited to Hideki, just because of how famous he is with this stuff. It was actually created by Richard Jacques, who you might know as one of the main people who made the Sonic R soundtrack. He made this song trying to imitate Hideki's style, and considering most people say Naganuma made this track, I would say he did a really good job. All of the original tracks created for Jet Set Radio absolutely bolster the modern pop culture the game was going for. I feel like if they didn't have this music that is full of so many samples and has such a hip-hop feel to it, I don't think the vibe they were going for would have landed quite as well. The music and the sound design has reached so far that I swear more people know how this game sounds than what it is. And not even just the music either. The sound design does such a good job of carrying every little movement in this game. From the iconic spray paint sounds to the menu record scratching, I would argue the sounds of Jet Set Radio is like half the game. And that's not even the entire soundtrack. We were only talking about the original songs. Keeping in line with its inspirations, it would end up having a ton of licensed music in it. The same licensed music that's getting this video demonetized. Quick reminder that my Ko-Fi link is in the description. Now, there was plenty of licensed music in the Japanese version, most notably David Soul's album, Sparkling Music, is one that has quite a few songs here. Yappy Feet, Dunny Boy Williams Show, Miller Ball Breakers, all incredible tracks. But for the localization to the West, they added tons of new licensed tracks from groups in America. Rob Zombie, Cold, Shovel, and my favorite, Jurassic 5. They only have one song in the game, but it's probably the most important out of all of the Western music, because their song, Improvise, is the main theme that plays whenever Combo is talking during his cutscenes. There's Rob Zombie with Dragula and What Lurks on Channel X, Shovel with Hit List and Set It Off, which was that uncredited song from the intro in case anybody was wondering. And then there's one of my favorite licensed bands in this game, known as Guitar Vader. They're in the Japanese version as well, but they do start a new discussion about this game's soundtrack. I think it's fucking cursed, actually. So for some reason, one of their songs, Super Brothers, is unabashedly about Mario for some reason. Why? And then the biggest mystery with this game's soundtrack is also my favorite song on the soundtrack. About the City by the Reps. Who are the Reps? That question isn't rhetorical. Who are they? Nobody knows who the hell the Reps are! They're just here and have the best song on the original track list, and for some reason, not a single person can point me in the direction of what else they've made. As far as I know, this is their only music credit on anything! I want to hear more of what they've made. Who are they? But that's all of the songs in-game. What about the songs in-game? One of my favorite things about Jet Set's music is hearing it while I'm playing. Not just because having cool music accompany cool gameplay feels cool, but also because of the radio aspect to it. Remember how DJ Professor K in Universe is remixing all of this for us? Well, that's only partially a metatextual element. Instead of a specific stage having a specific accompanying theme like most video games, Jet Set has several songs play per level. Now, when it comes to having multiple songs play per area in a video game, there's only really a few options that you can do tangibly. Have the songs crossfade, have the song currently playing stop and then the next one begin, have them change based on the part of the area, but Jet Set Radio sees those options and goes, nah, I'm nothing like y'all. They instead mix the end of the current song with the beginning of the next one. I can't even fathom the amount of effort that must have gone into this. Nearly every level has song transitions baked in like this. You'll be listening to Super Brother and then it'll start having record scratching that transitions it into Rock It On. It is It is brazenly obvious how much effort and care was put into the soundtrack of this game. I positively adore Jet Set Radio's soundtrack. The way the songs by Hideki and the others use samples just tickles my brain in all the right ways. Absolute vocal stem fodder, and I mean that as a compliment. If you're wondering which tracks are my favorite, I would probably say Moby's Shuffle, Everybody Jump Around, Sneak Man, About the City, Sweet Soul Brother, and Funky Radio. And for the licensed tracks, I would probably also add in What Lurks on Channel X, Improvise, Just Got Wicked, and Set It Off if that wasn't obvious. This game's soundtrack has not only led me to new artists which I love, such as Jurassic 5, but has also influenced so much of my creative style. I love it to bits. But we've talked about nearly everything with Jet Set Radio and the Dreamcast by now. I say it's time we start heading towards the finale of the game with Okay, look, I couldn't think of an overarching theme for this chapter. Shut up. It's time we wrap up this game. Chapter 3 continues at the new threat of the Golden Rhinos and the Rokaku Corporation by remixing the levels. There's now only one level per province, and the Metropolitan Police are completely out of this, making way for the Golden Rhinos and the Assassins to be the main threats of the stages. The challenge of these levels is to try to deal with the oppressive-ass Assassins while going through every previous area of each province all in one level. Honestly, this is probably the highlight of the game. It challenges your memorization of the stages, your decision-making of choosing which graffitis to do before summoning the harder enemies, your platforming capabilities, your innate want to not break your controller in half. It challenges everything you've been tested on up until this point. For Shibuya, it introduces assassins with bomb vests who will run at you and try to catch you on fire. Ben 10 introduces flamethrower guys and giants who will try to kick you. Where the hell did the Golden Rhinos find people this big? Could you send them my way? And then there's Kogane. On top of all of the basic guys with knives and sniper rifles, there's also the jetpack troopers of this level. How every other assassin works is that there's a bunch of smaller goons and then the big guy leading all of them who can usually be dealt with by spraying their backs just like Onishima. The jet troopers function absolutely nothing like that. These guys will just camp like 5 feet away from you at all times and just shoot you with these hit scan bullets while they're swarming above you like gnats. Fuck what I was saying about those guys back in Bantam Street. These ones are actually unavoidable. You can't be shot while running, but these guys fire like every 5 seconds, so any graffiti spots you're going to want to do, you're basically required to just damage tank. I actually developed a pretty cheesy strategy for these while going for the jet rank on this one. You see, after you get the notification that harder troops are coming in via the police scanner, during the Chapter 3 levels at least, the current troops you're dealing with will disappear. And after you spray your next graffiti spot, the cutscene triggers, spawning in the harder guys. So after ramming my face into this level for 2 hours trying to get the jet rank, I finally had a revelation. Never spray my next graffiti spot. After everybody was despawned, I exclusively did all of the green ones, and then for the red ones, I did them up until the last input that would complete them. I never finished any graffiti spots that were required, so they could never respond. I was literally edging the graffiti for an entire level just to avoid these guys. Ignoring Kogane and its extreme bullshit, these last 3 levels are very fun. Getting to run back through all of the levels again in a complete map is a joy. But since it's the same levels we've already gone over, I see no need to divulge further regarding them. But before we talk about the finale, there's 2 last characters you get during this chapter that I just kind of feel bad for. Piranha and Slate are the new Rudies that join the cast, and they come in far too late to make an impression, unfortunately. I love their designs though. Like walks into a record store to walk around for 30 minutes and not buy anything, and homophobic but secretly gay. It's really cool seeing the garage this full, honestly. Like so many people have joined their cause at this point, it's really rewarding once you get here. But anyway, after you beat all of the levels, you learn that the Rokaku Corporation and the Golden Rhinos stole your 2 pieces of the record from earlier. What does this record even do? Well, this is where the plot takes a fucking wild turn into absolute absurdity. I've been having my fun and comparing this plot to real life events, but where it's about to go is absolutely goddamn insane. So it turns out, the broken record are pieces to a record known as the Devil's Contract. When played, it is said to summon a demon, and Goji wants to use these pieces to make a deal with the devil and take over the world. What even the fuck. This absolute shift in the plot out of nowhere is hilarious to me. I wouldn't even call it a plot twist because who would have seen this coming? This is a whole thing I should probably say about a man giving up his very soul to obtain power, but I'm far too distracted by how ridiculous this is. So it's time for the GGs to go on the offensive. Goji with the golden rhinos and the GGs with the skin on their backs all meet up at the train station with everybody's favorite back. Poison Jam has returned, but look a little ill this time. They've all been brainwashed, and the game has its very last tagging mission around Jinsei Lane where you fight brainwashed Poison Jam. It's fine.
You want to talk about the final boss?
Okay. So, after we beat Poison Jam again, we free them from their brainwashedness somehow, and they spill that Goji and the Golden Rhinos now have all of the pieces of the broken record, and are going to play it to summon a demon. I'm not sure how this story element translated to gameplay is Goji DJing on the top of the Rikaku Tower with Golden Rhino strippers dancing around him as you skate on top of a giant disc trying to spray 4 different graffiti spots while fighting a giant Golden Rhino blimp that is alive somehow. The ending of Jet Set Radio is fucking insane. I'm in love with it. It's like they completely forgot what story they were writing halfway through and just started winging it. It's so absurd and unrelated to how the game begins that it somehow is the perfect finale to the game. And you want to know the worst part? This final boss kicks ass. The theme that plays in the level, Grace and Glory, is such an evil sounding bop. It's perfect at setting the mood. And despite how absolutely ridiculous this looks, it does follow the philosophy most video game final bosses go with. So there's 4 points you need to reach, 2 graffiti spots across these rails, and 2 graffiti spots across these gears. You have to spray these big spots before the giant golden rhino can breathe fire at you, dealing like half your health, and after each continuous spot has been sprayed, the record at the center gets a little faster. That's the premise for how this works, and this might seem completely unrelated to what the entire game has been about up until this point, but may I try to convince you this final boss is actually perfect for just a minute? Like most final bosses, it tests everything you've been challenged on up until now. Your ability to platform with the small platforming challenges to get to the graffiti, your resource management with choosing which spots to go for in which order, the risk reward with spraying the graffiti spots, and I think the Golden Rhino strippers are also involved in the gameplay somehow, I'm not sure. Love it or hate it, but this final boss is actually the perfect finale. Sue me. Please don't sue me, actually. I'm not popular enough to get away with crimes yet. I love this final boss. It's the perfect mix between a test of skill and completely goddamn silly. After all 4 graffitis have been spray painted, the giant golden rhino explodes and falls apart on top of the DJing table. But Goji is still jamming out. So the only way to stop him is to rail grind up one of the poles that was holding those cages and spray paint his bald head, which causes him to go flying into the void and die. The end. Fucking cinema. We're treated to a prologue by Combo and we roll credits. Okay, I know I should probably start writing my conclusion thoughts for the game, but just one last regional difference, pretty please. In the Japanese version, it's actually Professor K who gives the ending prologue. And the credits, instead of just being displayed on screen, are actually dynamically spray painted by whoever you played as during the final level. I feel like they definitely wanted to have this in the US version, but because this port was a rush job, I imagine by the time they were actually implementing this, the game already came out like 5 minutes ago. That's really cool how the US version finally has something that's worse. So that is Jet Set Radio for the Dreamcast. I really like this game. It has its flaws, yes, but there's so many things I love about it. If you were to ask me which is my favorite between the music and the gameplay and the level designs and the world, I wouldn't say any of those. What I most love about Jet Set Radio is its a lot of this video has been very in-depth, to put it lightly. For a lot of this, I've been pretty objectively looking at things, such as where samples are from, level designs, regional differences. But how do I quantify a game having a soul? Really, it's just vibe space, if I'm gonna be honest. Jet Set Radio just feels like they cared in every aspect. 100% dedication to the vision. This is the most of the time video game I've ever played. And in that way, it makes it feel timeless. It uses samples because that's what a lot of music around the time did. It has the anti-establishment theme because that's how a lot of kids felt at the time. It uses roller skates as your main form of traversal because that was the sport that was popular at the time. It's so set in this one time period of the 2000s that it really can never be separated from that. And even with all of this, I don't think it feels dated at all. A lot of the games around the time were trying to look realistic, but since gaming hardware wasn't really at that point yet, a lot of titles from back then kind of end up looking like very strange and muddy. And graphics like this were something they purposely tried to avoid. They wanted this game to be more than just a new video game that was coming out. They wanted it to be something players would never forget. The characters of Jet Set Radio are also beautifully designed, and their animations all breathe such life into them. This game's animation is so damn clean. Everybody having unique jumps, kind of. How nobody ever stops moving, even on the character select. I don't like to use these words much when it comes to creative works, because most of the time they do, but they actually didn't need to go this hard. The vibe this game carries just feels infectious. For the time, there was truly nothing like it. Nothing of what they wanted to do feels like it wasn't thought out. I mentioned at the beginning that they had a lot of time to think about their concept before they started programming the game, and it is wholeheartedly reflected when you play it. The accuracy of the in-game locations to real-life cities and provinces, how well the level designs are thought out, how every character really feels like they live in this world. They set out to make a game that felt real. They wanted something that felt like it was a part of real life, and they did it. Jet Set isn't a fantasy distraction from the world. That's not what they wanted. It is the real world. It's messy, and there's parts of it I can't stand, and it's soul-crushing, and it's frustrating, and it's this damn camera. It's flawed. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful. I love Jet Set Radio. Even with all of its frustrating problems that make me never want to touch it again, that's life, isn't it? The PS3 remaster was so much better though, like, oh my god. In case you've forgotten, we've been talking about the Dreamcast version of this game, despite most of the footage in the video being from the PS3 and Steam versions. So I think it's finally time we talk about those variants of the game, as well as the PS Vita port, because that exists too, but it's literally the same game and I don't feel like getting a PS Vita emulator working. So what do these remasters change? Well, for starters, they added right analog stick support. Thank God! It also gives you the ability to turn off the camera centering with the left trigger, so my problems with the tagging missions are completely diminished in this version. They also removed that quirk with the small graffitis where the camera moved towards them, so Grind Square is actually a lot more playable now. It runs in HD at 60 FPS, so there's no more frame rate issues. You also get to listen to songs from Jet Set Radio Future in the sound test. There's now achievements to point you in the direction of these cryptic-ass unlockable characters. I forgot to talk about the cryptic-ass unlockable characters, damn it. Okay, I already wrote my conclusion. I'm just gonna make this quick. If you can get all of the jet ranks in a specific province, then you get to play as that gang associated with that area. Get all of them in Kogane, you get to play as Poison Jam, Ben 10 Noise Tanks, Shibuya Love Shockers. And if you get all of the jet ranks in Grind City, you can play as Goji Rikaku, whose skates are rhinos with golden wheels, which is fucking hilarious. And if you jet rank everything and get every other character, a Noise Tank comes to your window and challenges you to do some impossible ass skating, which lets you play as Paz, who is the Gigi's dog I never mentioned. Okay, now we're done. This remaster is everything I could have hoped for with a remaster of the game. Yeah, it has its little problems that you would kind of expect from a Sega remaster, like the messed up Beat's blinking animation. Beat had a blinking animation? Honestly, anything that's wrong with it, I really didn't notice it. If I didn't notice it, then it's probably fine. Also, if you're wondering why I'm not using the Steam version for all of this video, that's because it's delisted on Steam. My pirated version doesn't allow save files to work. Bite me. If you're ever going to play this game, I highly recommend getting it on PS3, because after I got a taste of the PS3 version, there was no going back for me. It seriously fixed like 90% of my problems just by the virtue of being on a console that functions. Okay. We are now done talking about Jet Set Radio for the Sega Dreamcast, and the PS3, and Steam, and the Vita for some reason. I can't believe it runs on 2 failures! Jet Set Radio, for me personally, is going to go down as one of my favorite, if not my favorite game of all time. It also has a sequel that is considered 10 times better than it. I don't know how to write this part of the video. I want to put you in my place real quick. You've just beaten beloved game Jet Set Radio, and now it's time for you to play the sequel you've heard is a million times better. and you don't like it. I felt like maybe I was doing something wrong. I went and watched maybe a dozen reviews of this game, and they were all staggeringly in disagreement of what I was feeling.
This game absolutely rocks. I highly recommend you play it.
Experience a lost gem. You owe it to yourself to play this game.
The first game is known for, all add up to an easy recommendation.
Fine-tuned from the Dreamcast original to create a nostalgic feeling experience that is totally worth playing today.
I felt like I was losing my mind. This had to be just a me problem, right? I mentioned my partner earlier playing Jet Set Radio, so I made him play Future as well, and he felt the same way I did. So are we just crazy then? I've beaten this game twice now, and I still feel like there's something I'm not getting. I don't even know how to bring this up because this is not how I want this video to be perceived. I don't want this to be the video dunking on the game. I want this video to be in celebration of a franchise I love, which is kind of why I'm terrified writing this part of the video, because I don't want to just lie and praise the game when I'm not enjoying it. So how do I even write this segment about Future? I could just be brief and not explain any of my points well enough and get seen as somebody who's just bad at the game, or I could go way in depth and have half this video that is devised to be my personal love letter to the franchise, an unhinged rant about why I hate like 50% of it, because there's only 2 games, if that wasn't clear. Also, to anybody who's more familiar with this game, you might be wondering why I'm not using the widescreen hack to make my footage look better. I mean, I used the PS3 version of Jet Set for most of my footage to make it look more presentable. Well, that's because it has this strange bug that makes characters disappear every like 5 seconds. I don't know, I couldn't get it working properly, so for my entire playthrough, I just played it vanilla. This has probably been the hardest part of a video I have ever had to write. I have so many conflicting feelings that I truly don't know how to put it on paper. And despite what I'm going to say over the course of the next 16 minutes, I don't hate Jet Set Radio Future. I just don't know how to work this. How do I talk about my true feelings while also not turning people off of this video as a whole? If I had to describe JSRF in one word, it would be frustrating. Every other part of this game just frustrates me to no end. And not just because it's not fun to play for me personally, but because so much of it is so good as well. Like, you have no doubt heard this game's soundtrack. I played some of it earlier, and that's because it's really damn good. Better than the first game. I would argue one of the greatest OSTs in gaming history. Funky Dealer, Technopathetic, Fly Like a Butterfly, I Love You, and of course the concept of love. They even have the badass samples again, like Concept of Love samples a Black Panther speech.
We do not understand the concept of love. Understand the concept of love.
But it's hard to listen to this music in-game because of how the audio mixing is handled. If you ever run through a crowd of people, which happens often, every one of them screams individually, creating this absolutely overwhelming amount of noise. It is so overstimulating with the amount of sound effects it has. A lot of these area designs are some of the best the series has seen ever. Sky Dinosaur and Square, Highway Zero, the Fortified Residential Area, Rakude Heights, Kibokaka Hill, 99th Street, all of these areas are so fun and creative and build upon the overall world of what each side of Tokyo-to is like, but I absolutely can't stand going through them because I just hate how this game plays. The momentum feels so whack, like I can just speed up by doing absolutely nothing, and the rail hitboxes are so big that it feels nearly impossible to get off a rail sometimes. Like, speed being afforded to you automatically isn't a bad thing. I'm a fan of the Boo Sonic games. I know what this is like. But in those games, it's a button that gives it to you. I feel like this just happens without me wanting it most of the time. And it'll automatically make you do wall grinds even if you don't jump into it. So sometimes it'll happen without me wanting it to, and I'll be thrown to who knows where. If you're on a rail and you're going at top speed, you can't control how high you'll jump. So when the game wants you to be precise on a rail, which is like 90% of the levels, you just straight up can't be. The areas are a lot less open now, more feel like linear racetracks for how you go around them. Like Dogenzaka Hill, Highway Zero again, Chuo Street. It's not a familiar direction or one I would prefer, but frankly, I think they pull these off really well. It's so satisfying to do the rival races now because these levels feel like they were made to be racetracks instead of navigational challenges. Like, I didn't bring up the optional races you could do in the first game across the American levels, but they just suck. It's clear the levels weren't designed for this, but they had to force it in so every level could have the jet grinds. But here, it doesn't feel like any of the levels were retrofit to be something they weren't. And the other half of the stages suck so much ass, oh my god. Whoever made the Tokyo Underground Sewage Facility, there is a special place in hell waiting for you. The skyscraper district is so frustrating. It's not the hardest thing in the world, but falling off into the abyss not only makes it take like 10 seconds to respawn, but also means moving like a mile from where you fell into the last save area. The fortified residential zone has absolutely no rhyme or reason to how it's constructed and just feels like it's a Mario Maker level where people just threw things everywhere. This game's new visual style takes the cell shading of the first game and combines it with a lot of the early 2000s grunge, and it genuinely might be one of the best held up video games visually. Even though it's going for a style of the time with the edge, because of the cell shading and the low polygonal look to everything, I still think it looks fantastic even now. If this came out today and it looked like this, I wouldn't bat an eye. And it's been over 2 decades. One of the most fantastic looking games I've ever seen. Well, I don't really know what topic I can transition to based off that. Oh my god, these combat rooms. Sometimes in the middle of levels, they'll force you into these areas where you have to fight a bunch of enemies, and this has got to be some of the most boring and repetitive combat in a video game I've ever played. All you do is knock them down, then spray them a bunch with spray paint. And sometimes it can be really annoying knocking them down. Armored enemies you'll have to boost into, which is a new move introduced in this game, costing 10 spray cans. Which is fine, but a lot of the time, you'll run out of spray paint while there's still enemies around. Knocking them down automatically makes them drop like 10 spray cans, and there's usually a good amount around the areas. But if you fully run out, then tough shit! You have to stand around and wait for more cans to spawn in. In one of these combat rooms where I'm fighting Future's Onishima equivalent, I ran out of cans and just had to sit there for like 4 minutes waiting for new cans to spawn in. This is absurd. And even when they are down, it's just the tagging missions but horizontal. You just have to mash the spray button until they're dead, and that's it. And they throw these at you so often, and they never bring anything new to the table. It's either just you're fighting the lower powered guys, you're fighting the higher powered guys, or you're fighting Hayashi. That's it. Genuinely, some of the worst combat I've ever had the displeasure of experiencing. This game's story is absolutely absurd. I love it. It makes it pretty clear by level 3 that this game's going to have nowhere near close to the tone the first game had. You're taking down tanks and giant military walker droids that fire bombs at you with graffiti. For a while in my first playthrough, I wasn't the biggest fan of this honestly, but one moment made my thoughts completely 180. Near the finale of the game, these 2 absolutely absurd Golden Rhino troops get introduced, and Mr. Stretchy Arms over here actually had a pretty fun fight. He'll grapple to a side of a building and then fire one of his arms at you, which you'll have to skate up in order to knock him down. It's cool, it's actually involving your skating in a boss fight for once. I like that. And the way this fight ends, he's on his knees and a fighter jet then flies in, launching missiles to the ground. And they don't land and explode. They instead go upwards, hit him in the chest, fly into the sky, and they fucking explode. It's so absurd and silly and stupid that I couldn't help but lose my mind laughing at it. And then the other half of the story missions just make me sad. I swear, for every mission this game has that makes me think I'm liking it again, it just has another that pisses me off. So Yo-Yo gets kidnapped at one point in the campaign, and this guy named Clutch comes in to help out. But he asks you to collect 10 graffiti souls first in order to prove we're serious about this. So I'm going through the levels, doing platforming challenges, getting graffiti souls, and by the end of this fetch quest, I'm actually starting to have fun with this again. After we give them to him, he takes the 10 graffiti souls to Asgore to shatter the barrier. We give them to him and he steals them and runs away. So at this point, I'm like, what the heck? I'm enjoying myself. I'm starting to smile. It's a good time. And I get chasing him, which in order to find him, I have to go through Rakude Heights, then the underground sewage facility, and then finally arrive at Kibogaka Hill, where he ran off to. But after I got there, I get jumped by the Golden Rhinos again, and a cutscene triggers of him running away to who knows where. So you know what? Fine, whatever. I guess I have to go find him again. And I get told he's now in the skyscraper district, which is like 5 areas away. So I run all the way there, finally talk to the guy, and then he tells me Yo-Yo is being held in the fortified residential area, which means I have to go back through the sewers. And in case it wasn't clear, there's no fast travel in this game, so if you want to go from one end of the map to the other, you have to walk. The game has no ping of where you are either, so it makes it a bitch to navigate through the world of this game. Half of my playthrough just felt like it was my fucking commute time. It would have been so easy to just add a fast travel where it says something like, do you want to ride the bus to Hike It Street? But no, I have to fiddle with Google Maps for 10 minutes before I can go to the next level. And while I'm on the topic of things they could have easily added, there is still no right analog support. The Xbox, which this game was exclusive to, had a fucking right analog stick. What is your problem? Luckily, spray painting and the camera press enter button are on different buttons now, since running is done automatically, but don't you think for a second the tagging missions are any easier. The first tagging mission with Poison Jam legit just feels like grinding, and not grinding like on a rail, grinding like in an RPG. They'll just run around these 3 separate big holes in circles waiting to be shot like they have zoochosis, and the only spray cans in the area you'll run out of before they run out of health, so you have to sit here waiting for them to respawn. But while I'm on the topic of the rival gangs, there are 3 new ones here, and they are all really cool. Poison Jam, Noise Tanks, and Love Shockers are all back, as well as new gangs of the Immortals, Doom Riders, and Rapid 99. Not all of them really get a chance to shine as much as the others. Like, it really feels like Rapid 99, the Love Shockers, and the Doom Riders get heavily sidelined, but it's cool seeing how many different gangs we don't get to see in the first one. And while we're on that topic, I love Poison Jam's redesign. Look at these funky guys. They no longer look like dweebs, they look like they could rip you in half. That's another thing I'm mixed on with this game. A lot of the characters get redesigns, and some of them look really cool, and are direct improvements. Look at how sick Tab looks in this game. The fire print around the legs of his pants, the giant point hat, he looks awesome. And so do a lot of the other characters. Beat now has these little metal nubs sticking out of his shoulder blades. Slate looks like he finally learned how to dress himself. Then there's some changes I'm more neutral on, such as Gums and Garums, where I don't really have any strong feelings one way or the other. And then there's the redesigns I straight up don't like. Mew, take those things off. You look ridiculous. Your Austin Powers looking ass. Oh my god, Combo, they removed all your swag. I'm so sorry. I vastly prefer how he looked in the first game with the hat and the jacket instead of the bald ass head. Ignoring their designs though, I think an undeniable upgrade that Future has over the first is the characterization. The garage is now an open area you can screw around in freely, and you can even talk to all of the different GGs individually. And they all have different things to say depending on who you're playing as and when you talk to them. If you talk to Garum when Yo-Yo gets kidnapped, he'll be sad about it because they're gay, I think. Ignore how I forgot to get footage of this. If you talk to Beat when this robot clone of him gets introduced into the plot, he'll be hyper defensive that it isn't him. If you're playing as Yo-Yo and talk to everybody after the level where you rescue him, everyone will be commenting about how he's back. The amount of effort put into the writing this time cannot be understated. But unfortunately, one character got a writing change that I'm actually not a fan of. And it kills me to say it, but DJ Professor K. Now, he did get a different direction, slight personality change. He's no longer as eccentric and loud, he's a lot more mellow and smooth talking, which I think is a really good direction to take his character, actually. I want to make it clear, I still love DJ Professor K, especially in this game. I just hate his role in it. The story element of all of the different gangs in Tokyo To is still the same as it ever was. If it wasn't clear, this game's kind of a reboot. Like, basically the story's starting over from the very beginning of the first one, just a lot more off the wall. But for some reason in Future, he is so far up the GG's ass, he can see daylight at every point, at every turn. He's like 100% on the GG side. He'll make his broadcasts like he's still neutral, but he'll contact you directly telling you where to go and what to do for the entire game. Like when you finally get to Faro Park in the Skyscraper District and you meet the Immortals who are all resting in their coffins, K will open his big stupid mouth and tell you exactly where on the map to go to take their territory. Why? Later in the story, every other rival gang gets brainwashed by the Rakaku, so if he started helping us directly at that point, it would be fine, but it just makes it feel like really biased and unfair to everybody else. Like, you could argue he was like this in the first game as well, and that wouldn't be entirely incorrect. Near the finale, he has the line of, "Can the GG's graffiti save the city?" But that line makes sense in context because at this point, the GG's are kind of the last group of Rudies standing. Poison Jam is MIA, and the other two had their shit rocked by us. He only sides with us directly when we're the last ones who could do anything. I'm sure he'd probably side with the Noise Tanks if they were the last ones left. In Future, he's with us 100% the whole way through, and the roles he fills between games hasn't changed, by the way. He's still the guy delivering the news of the street, being a neutral third party, so I don't understand why he's specifically helping us against everybody else. In context of the game, it just feels unfair to all the other skaters. After all of them get brainwashed, sure, at this point it would be totally acceptable. Like, let me just give you an example of what I mean. In the first game, most of his interaction with the player felt like,
"Looks like one of the GGs fell and ate shit down in Shibuya. Sucks to be them."
But in Future, it's way more like,
"All right, Beat, listen up. Right here I have 3 different bags of M80, and here's a map of Immortal territory. We'll be placing bombs here, here, and here."
Do you understand what I'm saying here? Every time, And I mean every time I feel like I'm finally starting to like this game and see the light, another stupid thing happens that reminds me about every little problem it has. Like the final boss. For the first part of it, I was having a lot of fun. You have to do a tagging mission around the Shibuya terminal against these freaky beat clones as Goji, who is voiced by Charles Martinet of all people, start talking about this freaky tower he's in. And as you're running around, a banging ass remix of Grace and Glory starts playing and Professor K starts giving this blood pumping speech about how only we can decide the future. And it's genuinely one of the coolest feeling moments of the entire franchise. Then you get sucked in this big tower and I suddenly remember why I don't like this game. I don't know how he did it, but Goji managed to fit the entirety of Hello Neighbor's final boss inside his tower. Definitely not Charles Martinet doing his Wario voice at the very top, stomping around in his Protogen fursuit, and you have to get your way up there through random ass game assets just sitting around. And because of the camera, it makes this stupid climb impossible. Like there's a lot of these points in game where they make you do these loops and they shoot you out, but usually at the end of these, it's a safe area. That's because you can't see where you're going to be going because of the camera. But here, you have to immediately jump off of them as they end in order to keep climbing. And there's 2 of these! And because of how much health Goji has and how the only spray cans are at the very bottom, it means you have to do this climb at least like 3 times. This doesn't feel like a Jet Set level. This feels like Bennett Foddy broke in and started developing the game at the last second. This might actually be the most upsetting game I have ever played. Without fail, every time I start to enjoy myself and smile and change my mind, it kicks my teeth in. And this game isn't frustrating because of my things I don't like about it. It's also because of the things I love about it. If Jet Set Radio Future had like no redeeming qualities and was just a standalone thing, I could easily just say it was a product of its time and not worth anything. But it is worth something. This style and vibe and the characters and the world all feel so loved by the developers. I can feel its very essence calling out to me, wanting to be loved, and I just can't. The controls feel too clunky and finicky. It has too many weird choices. And seriously, why the hell doesn't this have camera controls? 3D platformers already implemented the right stick at this point. What is wrong with you? And it sucks to say that because there's so many good choices here too. Like giving Goji voice acting made him feel like so much more of a character. The changes to the graffiti where you can do it super fast while running was really cool. The new and improved graffiti making tab was a welcomed addition. There is so much that is here, and I just can't stomach it because of everything else. I do not enjoy Jet Set Radio Future. Do you think I feel good saying that? The sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, I don't enjoy. It hurts. And not just because, well, I can't enjoy my video game. I want to be like everybody else with Future. I want to see it for a masterpiece. One of the greatest games ever devised. Something gaming could never live up to, but I can't, okay? And that's just the way life is. Sometimes you just can't. That's just the way it is. You can try again and again, but life isn't fair sometimes. I have to live with who I am. Somebody who doesn't like this video game. I think I lost the point there for a second. I know this isn't the end you hoped for, and it isn't the end I wanted either, but I can't love Jet Set Radio Future. Well, that stunk. So, that's it. Jet Set Radio on the Dreamcast didn't do amazingly sales-wise, considering it was sold at the end of the console's life. And Jet Set Radio Future on the Xbox didn't do well either because of being very niche on the Xbox. And because of middling sales across both games, it would end with Future. And this would be the end of Jet Set Radio. But these two have something that very few games can actually achieve. It's what all true pieces of art strive for. And that's Jet Set Radio's Jet Set Radio is a pretty niche, but I would say very popular game. Yes, I know those two phrases are contradictory, just let me explain. I heavily doubt most of the people watching this video saw commercials of it 25 years ago, went, that looks fun, and then purchased a copy for their Sega Dreamcast. You probably heard about Jet Set through other people. I mean, I've been calling it a franchise, but really, it's just 2 games with occasional appearances and some Sega crossovers. You, like many others, probably discovered the game through its community. The amount of people who love Jet Set Radio cannot be understated, and its reach has extended to enough people to where new creatives have come and made their own pieces of art heavily influenced by it. I think one of the biggest and partial funniest ones is Air Gear. Yes, the manga as well, but specifically the anime. It's a whole series about teens forming gangs based around skating and competing with one another in little skating related challenges. Now, it isn't just Jet Set inspired because of skating, but also because of its soundtrack. It has that same techno hip-hop sample-y kind of vibe Jet Set does. And not to mention that Hideki also worked on the soundtrack. This has got to be my favorite piece of lore about this man. He was still employed at Sega at this time, and he probably shouldn't have been working on something that wasn't related to them, so he used the pseudonym Skank Funk for all of his credits. This is the funniest man ever devised. And of course, if something big enough to be printed in Shonen and later animated by Toei was inspired by Jet Set Radio, you know Independents certainly were. You could probably label a dozen games as inspired by Jet Set from vibes alone, but going off of works, I can say for sure, there is Sunset Overdrive, Hover, Neon Tail, Butterflies, and what I think is the most well-known ones. Team Reptile in 2018 made the arcade fighting game known as Lethal League Blaze, which is undeniably inspired by JSR, with its cel-shaded art style and Hideki making a song on the soundtrack. The reason I bring this up is because Team Reptile's next game would be the biggest piece of Jet Set fan content ever made. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. The way I view this game is like if Jet Set Radio and Jet Set Radio Future were both a bunch of ingredients just laying about. Yeah, a lot of them are good in their own rights, like you could definitely just eat an entire tomato, but some of it's completely unusable. I see Bomb Rush Cyberfunk as the game to take all of the best elements from both and make one generational experience out of it. It really takes everything I didn't like about both games, and even things I did like about them, and fixes them or expands upon them entirely. The tagging missions have now been combined with the character unlock missions, where rival gangs will now test you with little platforming challenges to see if you're a real threat to them. And they throw these at you within the level you're already in, so it's great at not only being a little tutorial for how you can progress through an area, but also challenging your skating abilities. And most of them are under a minute, so the pace can keep moving forward without any hiccups. And the skating feels so tight. Practically everything I didn't like about the skating in Future is perfected here. Future had a tricking system that felt pretty unimportant outside of getting graffiti souls. I didn't really see any use for it since points weren't required for really any of the game. But in Bomb Rush, the tricks have a whole array of how the game uses them. To actually gain a territory from a rival gang, you need to beat them in a crew battle, which the winner is decided by who had the most points. So tricking in this instance is already given a use, but it's also used to charge up your boost gauge. And when you're not on a rail, tricks are also useful again for the game's combat. And you're not just allowed to use these willy-nilly either. To spice up how traversing rails works, holding the joystick in which direction you're being taken will make you speed up and give you a multiplier to your points. Left turn coming up, hold left and you'll get a burst of speed. But this doesn't work if you're currently doing a trick, so you can't just spam it. There's also all of the ways your traversal has been upgraded. I really didn't like the rails in Future because they felt way too big, and because of the level designs, if one started taking you in a direction you didn't want to go in, it was nearly impossible to turn around. Well, Bomb Rush adds complete freedom on rails. You have an air boost move in Bomb Rush that lets you course correct, turn around, go farther with jumps. It does a lot. And on top of that, there's the boost gauge I mentioned a second ago. It just lets you go faster. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to glaze this one. And this goes out to whoever decided that your character will do a handstand and be able to go in any direction at the end of a rail. I love you! And there's also the combat with the police. This has been improved majorly as well off of Future. Unlike Future, you don't only have two means of fighting them with the boost and the spray paint. When you're not on a rail, all of the face buttons except for A that are dedicated to tricking instead get turned into different attacks. And depending how you want to play, you don't even need to fight the cops. You can just avoid them if you're good enough. Spray painting has been called pretty slow and boring and a pace breaker and bad in the first game. And in Future, it was improved to just being holding the button as you walk across a wall. And I think Bomb Rush has the best of both worlds with what it does. You no longer need to collect spray cans, instead the challenge is actually getting to the graffiti spots. They're all placed in hard to reach areas, so the challenge with the level design is being able to not only find your way up to them, but performing well enough to actually get there. And the tagging is so satisfying too. Just God, that felt good. I love how this game's version of the graffiti souls have been expanded upon. There's this little notebook in Future that lets you view little platforming challenges you can do in order to spawn a soul. But now those challenges are integrated into the environments. These little spinny hand guys will be all over the place, and if you can manage to hit all of them without breaking your combo, then you get a new reward like a new music track or a new graffiti pattern, or sometimes nothing at all. Fuck you. These level designs are so damn good as well. They're all built like big playgrounds for you to screw around in, but vandalism. The objective of getting the graffitis mixes the first game's big open area approach with Future's no time limit huge level approach. It even has everything connected through level exits just like in Future as well. But fortunately, in Bomb Rush, it actually has fast travel. Thank the Lord. These character designs are another thing I must stress this game does phenomenally. All of the rival gangs have these crazy ass looks to them that make them stand out so much. The Franks, who are all Frankenstein inspired with their leader, the fucking Flesh Prince. Whoever came up with that joke, I want you dead. The Eclipse crew with their astrology theme, .exe with their cue ball ass head, and my personal favorite, the Old Heads. Kind of a neutral group that judges the crew battles. Also, I just need to go off for a second, but did these guys seem like Jet Set homages to anybody else? Boom Pap is an homage to Combo, that one's kind of a given because of the boombox. Old School is Tab because of the giant pointy hat and eye covering. And Classic is Robbie, who was a tutorial guy I didn't really mention that was in Future. I can definitely just be looking too far into this, but if I'm right, that's really cool. And the final character design I really like is, of course, DJ Cyber. He's got records he uses as discuses to attack people. It's so creative. On the topic of Cyber, though, the story is really damn good. Not the main objective of spray painting the whole city. I mean the story of the main character, Red. Really, I could make half this video about cyberpunk, but I think this warrants its own discussion for another time. And one last note, Hideki also made a song for this game. He is inevitable. I'll definitely come back and make a video about this or something another day, but for right now, though, I see Bomb Rush Cyberpunk as the perfect Jet Set Radio game. Every element I didn't like from either has been completely cut or fixed entirely. Jet Set Radio and its influence has inspired music, TV, video games. Hell, it's gone so popular just through its style and fan base that they're making a whole ass new game. The same game that's probably gonna make this video immediately outdated. The 25th anniversary is the 31st, and this video should be coming out around a month before that. I guarantee you we're getting more information about Jet Set Radio 3 at that time because it's also the 25th anniversary. To anybody watching this in a month, I either look like a prophet or very silly right now. Jet Set Radio holds a very special place in my heart. It's a very corny thing to say in a video essay, but I would consider Jet Set Radio to be a masterpiece. I'm not the only person this game has touched. It is so much more than its style. I am not lying when I say it's quite possibly one of the most influential games ever made. And not just influential for other pieces of media, influential in people's lives. It made me realize that, sure, things get bad and really bad, but they'll never stay that way. We might be worse off now than what we might have been yesterday, but we still have the future.
And when I say future, I don't mean all that stuff that Nostradamus wrote. The future is one big blank slate, yo! And it's up to you to decide what goes on in it.
Hey suckers, it's outro time. A creator I really liked watched one of my videos recently and made fun of me for saying thanks for watching. So you know what? Fuck you for watching. Hope you hated it. Joking aside, I am so happy I'm done with this video. I've been working on this shit since May. I'm finally free. And of course, I haven't been alone in it. God, where do I even start? Thank you to Chase Beck for providing the voice of DJ Professor K. All of the stupid little voice acted bits I wanted to do wouldn't have been possible without you. You can find him, as well as all the other people who helped make this in a description. Usually I credit all of the notable people who helped verbally, but I think we'd be here for an extra like minute and a half if I did. On top of that, thank you to everybody who has supported me financially. Now that I'm done here, I might make 1 or 2 discussion videos before the next big one, but don't expect to see me for a while. This next one's gonna be a doozy.